Monday, June 2025 at 5:31 p.m. A reminder, please turn off all cell phones except for emergency personnel. Mute them if you're in council chambers, and mute if you are on Zoom until called upon. Amy, will you go ahead and do roll call?
Mayor Giordani,
Yes.
Councilmember Bergen,
Here.
Councilmember Mahoney,
Here.
Councilmember Obina, here, Councilmember Reed,
Here.
Council President Shay, here, Councilmember Davis, here. Thank you.
Notice of agenda compliance for Idaho Code 74-204, finding that the regular meeting notice and agenda were posted in accordance with Idaho Code 74-204 within 48 hours prior to the meeting at the City of Bellevue City Hall, Post Office, and on the city's website on June 17th, 2025.
I move that the notice for the June 23rd, 2025 meeting was completed in accordance with Idaho Code section 74-204.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Call for conflict as outlined in Idaho Code 74-404. Any conflict with tonight's agenda?
I have none, Mayor.
Thank you.
I have a conflict, but I'm not really sure. I just need to check it. I apologize. I received a text and it's regarding the Meyer thing. Should I disclose that now or later?
Let's wait till disclosures for
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Let me check.
Okay. We're moving on to item 3, mayor and council report. I'll start us off for the evening. I just wanted to say that I'm very proud of how Main Street is looking. I think it's a nice beautification element for our city and look forward to the completion of that project. I am hopeful for our discussion tonight on our wastewater system. So thank you for all who have attended for that or are attending for later in that discussion. Wanted to call out some positive things happening at the library. Our summer reading has started with great success. And just also call out our open house block party that our fire department is throwing on July 1st from 6 to 9. Free food, bouncy houses, party games, fun for everyone, and the chief there riding around in engines and showing you everything.
We still have to cook. I want to ride around on an engine.
So I would love to see the community come out and join for that. And then on July 8th, we have our next town hall scheduled and we'll be focused on our right-of-way management discussion. Kind of a citizen/city-led beautification project that discusses right-of-ways, considerations of landscaping, gardening, and things of the sort. So just a few upcoming dates I'd love to put on your calendar and want to see if the council has anything else to their reports. Diane, Burra to report?
I don't. We are trying to schedule a meeting within the next couple of weeks to discuss moving forward with some kind of a streetlight project. Stay tuned.
Okay.
What is the streetlight project?
Well, we have several broken lights on Main Street and yeah,
Got it.
so we're trying to figure out a way forward on that.
Tom, anything in parks?
No, not really too much to report. Did a little tour with Kristen Fletcher, kind of the Memorial Park, and which was informative. And then we're meeting again tomorrow morning to talk about some things, or not tomorrow morning, but Wednesday morning. And so otherwise not anything. That we did have also, I guess maybe would be worth reporting. Brian maybe can supplement this too, that we met with the Idaho Heritage Trust at the museum. And there was an engineer and an architect there, and they kind of reviewed a little bit of some of the challenges, maybe I'll say, at the old city hall / museum. and jail there as well, and some of the things that might need to be done to kind of upgrade that, and they were gonna provide a report at some point, in the next, I think, few weeks that we can forward to the council, but as the owners of that property, it's kind of appropriate that we all be informed about the situation there.
And then just a comment that, Tom is a liaison now for communications around, wastewater facility issues for residents down in the area near the wastewater. So if they're, Tom is a great direct line of communication from the council, and kind of a representative, to be open to receiving, calls, complaints, questions, from citizens in that area. Tom's a great guy.
Wow.
Yeah, Tom's the guy to give a call to.
Yeah.
Suzanne?
I wanted to follow up, when we discussed Bellevue's compliance with, state law, particularly around the recently enacted Idaho statute 19-6102. And just kind of report, my findings on that. I think, as people may or may not know, Idaho statute 19-6102 prohibits any government entity in our state from adopting or enforcing policies that discourage cooperation with federal immigration authorities. And Bellevue's resolution 2236, adopted at the end of 2021, and prior to the Idaho statute, goes directly against the statute, specifically with language such as city marshal, police officers shall not use any city funds, resources, personnel, time, or labor to enforce civil or administrative federal immigration laws. So the resolution not only discourages cooperation, it expressly forbids it. So really the single issue here is Bellevue's compliance with state law. I don't think we have to get into any, the politics. But we are an extension of the state. We're not a rebel colony. And we are an Idaho city, which means like any other municipality, we are simply a governing entity of the state. We're simply an extension. It's our duty under the oath we all swore with our office to respect and uphold the Idaho Constitution. So, it kind of is that simple.
Okay.
And,
I
so,
hear what you're saying, and I would say that the best, move forward there would be for you to coordinate with the marshal on recommendations on what we'd like to do with that ordinance and how to move forward. And I think the marshal would be the direct line of connection for you to have that conversation.
well, aren't we responsible for making sure we adhere to the state law? That ordinance is one of our laws. We're in direct
Marshall, would
conflict.
you like to weigh in?
Don't we, is it an ordinance? It's a resolution.
I was gonna say, I want that resolution. Yeah, it's a
Resolution.
resolution, it's not a notice.
So,
Thank you. Sorry, Tammy.
well, I just wanted to also iterate. If we're on a disfavored list, if we are being combated with the state or the federal government, we get a lot of our funds, our grants and things, and so, I don't know if this is something I can do right now, but I wanted to move for repeal.
I think you're in the section of a mayor and council report, so the intention of this section of the agenda is to report on items that you as a council member, are working on in the community
Okay.
and with constituents and, as tasks of some of the committees that you're working on. So that's the intention of this aspect of the agenda. It's not an action item.
Okay,
So if
So
this
what
is your
is-
report, is what you've been researching and
that's
kind of
my
where you're at.
report, and so what happens next?
So Mayor, could I ask then, would an appropriate action, since this is a resolution that's on our books, for that resolution to be repealed? And have that be an actual agenda item on an upcoming agenda that will be noted as an action item so that the council can take action, because I don't see this being the spot where we can take action on. it.
Yes, and I think my direction to say in working with the marshal on it would be to come to the council with an agenda item with a recommendation to bring it to consideration for the council to repeal, amend. I had previously discussed with the marshal about if an amendment of language was appropriate and or a repeal altogether. And so that would be my guidance, would be if you would work, but and then bring it back to me as an agenda item for the council to discuss and make a decision on.
Well, and my final comment was gonna be where there are concerns about certain goals that the resolution sought to attain. then those goals should be addressed by creating policies and procedures within the scope of the state legislature and our powers as, you know, a government entity of the state. So that makes perfect sense.
So I feel that the next thing is something actionable, and it feels appropriate to do a little more work on that and then bring it back as a proper agenda item for discussion, instead of kind of an ad hoc motion at this time.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. Tammy, anything to report?
I don't think so.
Jessica?
No reports. I missed the Blaine County Housing Authority meeting this last week. It was a 3-hour long, so I had a lot of information to go through because it was more of a public comment and working through a lot of their items. I couldn't take that time out of my day, but I will follow up and bring a report back on that. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, anything on your end to report at this time?
Yeah, a little bit. We have it in the agenda about the events committee tonight. But Stephanie, as far as Labor Day goes, has been really, she's got most of the bands hired, and vendors and other stuff. So she's gonna come in and say something to you guys in the near future.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll go ahead and move us on to item number 4, consent agenda. We have approval of claims from June 10th through June 23rd, 2025, and ratification of the mayor's signature on a letter of support for Mountain Ride's application for low or no emission grant program. Any questions or discussion on the consent agenda?
Nope.
Other than the writing is so teeny tiny.
Small, small.
And we'll see if we can do something about that.
But I can rotate them. I'm sorry if that didn't happen this time.
If there are no questions or discussion items, I'd take a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Council President Shay,
Yes.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Councilmember Ovina, yes, Councilmember Mahoney,
Yes.
Councilmember Bergen.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
Moving on to item number 5, this is our public hearing. It's continued from May 27th, 2025. This is in regard to LLAU-25-01, TBD Lewis Lane, Judy and Keith Myers, an application for a lot line adjustment for lots 1 through 6, block 96 of the Bellevue Townsite original plat. The proposed lot line adjustment will reconfigure the existing 6 parcels into 3 parcels and include a request for waivers for code requirements. Brian Parker, Community Development, have you take it off?
Alright,
Start us off.
yes, so this one, has been in front of you guys several times now. This is a lot line adjustment, for, 6 parcels, around Lewis Lane. Before we get into it, I'd like to my parte communication, we'd like to disclose from Councilmember Davis. Go ahead and do that now.
And I'm presupposing I received a text on Wednesday, May 28th, 2 days after the meeting on Monday, from Jen Kuhn saying it's unfortunate, it would have made a nice addition for the city. I took that as it was some correspondence regarding the Myers property. And I just said, I'm not sure what you were talking about, so I just wanted to disclose that, so.
Anybody else have anything? I just think.
Yeah,
Keyboard?
absolutely.
One or less. Yeah. Alright.
want to share the interview?
I did not.
No, she's like, give that back to me then.
Brian, before your presentation, do you need me to open the public
Yeah,
hearing?
go ahead.
Okay. It is at this time. I will open the public hearing. For LLA 25-01 TBD Lewis Lane, Judy and Keith Myers.
Okay. So like I said, this has been in front of you guys a few times. 6 existing parcels are proposing to reconfigure it into 3. Between 7 or 18,000 and 24,000 square feet. It is all zoned business. The site was originally approved for a similar lot line adjustment in 2023, which has since expired. This application was recommended for approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission on March 17th of this year. So I'm gonna kind of skip through a lot of the stuff that we've already been through several times and just really dive into the approval standards that you're looking at tonight. This is the language on lot line adjustments in our code. I want you to ignore pretty much everything except what was red. The blue part is the procedural steps that are required, which we are doing and have done to date. The red piece is really what matters, that you must find that it is in compliance with the provisions of this title. And so the applicable provisions of this title, start with definitions from 11-2-1. An alley is a minor public way providing secondary access to the back or side of a property otherwise abutting a street. A block is a large group of tracts, parcels, or lots within a well-defined boundary, usually space. Building envelope. I'm not gonna read all. Make sure you know. So floodplain, I want to point out that there is a definition of it. It is the 100-year floodplain as adopted by FEMA and our floodplain ordinance, which is Title 12. And the rest of that is mostly convenience if we need to get into it later. So compliance with the subdivision code regarding lots. So A is that the lot size, width, depth, shape, orientation, and minimum building setback lines shall be in compliance with zoning district which the property is located. Which again is B business. It's 50-foot minimum lot with 6,000 square foot minimum lot area. There are no building setback requirements. And is compatible with subdivision and type of development and preserves solar access to adjacent properties. There is no type of development specified at this time. It is just the lot line adjustment. There is no development proposed with this application. And similarly, solar access can't really be determined if there is any issue with that until they actually know what they're building. So there is floodplain and slopes in excess of 25%. And maybe corner lots, depending on your interpretation of code. So building envelopes need to be shown, which they have identified a building envelope on lot 1A that is outside of the 1% floodplain and is outside steep slopes. Building envelopes on lots 2 and 3 have not been identified. They would only need to identify the corner lot or in the areas outside of the corner lot, which is a 75-foot radius from the intersection of the center line and 2 adjoining streets. So every lot in the subdivision shall have 20 feet of frontage on a dedicated public or approved private street. Gets into the waiver request on whether the Lewis Lane is a street or an alley, and also on lot 1A, there's a flat note stating that no building permit shall be issued until such time as built or the extended to that property. The section on blocks is not applicable because they're not reconfigured, they're not proposing any new blocks. It is all within one block. So we'll move on to street standards again. So it shall be constructed to meet or exceed the standards set forth in city standards for streets. So again, there's no street proposed at lot 1A, and the building would be required to have a street to it, and that is reflected in the plat notes. And then the Lewis Lane side, They're requesting waivers from our city standards. So move on to the waivers. That you are required to determine that a special physical characteristic or condition affecting this property in question, where literal enforcement of this title would result in undue hardship, not the result of actions by the subdivider, and the waiver would not be detrimental to the public welfare, health, and safety, nor injurious to the property owner or in the immediate area. And you must also determine that the data and maps submitted by the applicant are sufficient to illustrate this. So, since the last meeting, it was continued to investigate the IDWR non-compliance issue. As the typo, which is a notice of non-compliance or notice of violation. That was included in your packet. I contacted the stream channel operation program there. They didn't have any additional information. My recommendation, if you choose to approve it, is to include the condition of approval stating that geotechnical report is required prior to building permits, so that thorough investigation of the soil quality in the building is available and included in the package. And there was also received new public comment from Dora Chanella, Sarah Lurie, Project Bigwood, Jamie Rothschild, and Leanne Durkin. So, do we have any more questions? Okay.
I am not recalling if our code defines undue hardship.
It does not in Title 11. It does in Title 10, but we are limited to reviewing Title 11 because that is what the standards say. Plans with Title 11. So it's up to you to determine what exactly constitutes undue hardship.
Can that definition be used as a guide or a reference at least, to give us some idea for what considerations might go into undue hardship?
Yes, if I can pull it up. Okay, undue hardship. Special conditions depriving the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other property owners in the same district under the terms of this title, but not merely a matter of convenience or profit.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brian at this time? Tom?
You had mentioned a plat note, maybe on the Riverside plat, one of the Riverside plats about the extension of that drive. Was that, did I hear you correctly?
Yes.
And could you repeat that comment, please?
I don't have the specific language in front of me, but there is a plat note to the effect. I see a printed copy of the plat right over there. Tammy, can we borrow yours or found?
Thank you. That's not the Riverside Drive. Maybe it's on the back.
So plat note number 10 says, no building shall be constructed on lot 1A until a time when an approved access to the lot is developed.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right. If there are no other questions for Brian, I will ask that any representative of the proposal present to us and get some answers here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Samantha Stalnecker with Local Engineering for the record. I have a.
Sorry. I was just.
Oh, gotcha. I just have a question in terms of procedure tonight. Is the council planning on opening public comment as well after this?
Yes.
So I'll hold my responses to some of those. I'm gonna be brief I've spoken to you a number of times and presented, our side of, the application and the request in front of you for a plat amendment and, waivers, including alley construction, corner lot setbacks, and, addressing the canal setback as well, in consistency with the agreement with the canal company. The goal of our project and the plat amendment in front of you tonight is to create a more logical lot layout. Currently, there's 6 townsite lots, which really don't make sense given the topography of the site. And one of the overarching goals that, we've talked about a number of times of the Myers is to create an opportunity for a fee simple property on the west side of the existing canal, that would potentially be able to be transferred to a third party for the continuance of the Howard Preserve. Unfortunately, I don't have an update for you on the appraisal and our negotiations with the Wood River Land Trust. Those are ongoing. We were hopeful that we would have an answer on that, but we still have some work to do there. And for that reason, again, I think that it's appropriate to continue this application tonight if you so choose. We would appreciate the additional time to come back to you with a clean understanding of what is going to happen with parcel proposed lot 1A. I've been speaking a lot about this plat amendment as an opportunity for the council to clean up a situation that I don't think we want to see developed in its current configuration. With the 6 existing lots today, the entire property under the city code is buildable. So anything outside of the 100-foot riparian setback and the floodplain is buildable. The area that we're defining as building envelope on the lower portion of the southern lots is buildable. We would like to have a clear answer in terms of our negotiations with the land trust and hopefully have an option agreement for them to purchase the property before you make your decision. If you don't decide to continue tonight and you decide to make a decision, as staff mentioned, I would direct you to the standards. We reviewed the standards, we've reviewed the staff reports, and we feel that this plat amendment is in compliance with the standards of evaluation for these 3 lots. Again, we think this plat amendment is a benefit for the city of Bellevue. It creates an opportunity for that fee simple transfer of the property for the continuance of the Howard Preserve, and it creates a good solid vehicular access to that preserve as well. We appreciate this opportunity. We're here to answer questions. I guess while I'm up here, I will address a couple of the public comments that I did have an opportunity to review. I know that Project Bigwood submitted the records for the 2006 IDWR violation. I spoke to Keith Myers about that. And I just got a little bit of background. He was responding to an emergency situation when he was doing bank work back in 2006. He received a notice of violation. And efficiently responded and met all of the conditions that IDWR imparted on him as part of that notice of violation. He paid his fine and closed that notice of violation out. So that was taken care of in 2006. There was another public comment by Project Bigwood recently requesting that the building envelope on lot 1A be removed from the proposed preliminary plat. In terms of the standards of review for the city of Bellevue, under section 11-4-6 item B, I think that our property is subject to building envelopes and requires them because of the floodplain and steep slopes on the property. So unfortunately, removing that building envelope is not consistent with that standard of review. But I'm happy to answer any questions the council has, and I look forward to the public comment as well.
No questions.
And you may not be able to answer this, but, if there was no lot line shift, and again, I don't know, there was no change of it, as I understand, there's already proposed purchases or people who are interested in lot 2A and 3A? Potentially,
Yeah,
And-
that's all subject to
yeah,
this.
and maybe this sounds like a silly question, but why wouldn't they just have sold off 3 lots to one and 3 lots to the other? And not go through this process? Like, why would that change his ability to access and have like do anything to those lots, 1A and 2A respectfully anyway.
Well, the goal of the Myers really has been to create this opportunity to extend the Howard Preserve, and selling three town site lots together, would really prohibit that from happening. So when those two groups of three lots change hands, then whoever's interested in purchasing an easement or, negotiating some sort of lot line shift like this in the future, dealing with more people, the goal of the Myers has been to create this opportunity to extend the Howard Preserve. So they've gone through a significant amount of expense, and time trying to get this process, completed. And it is really all for the goal of extending the Howard Preserve.
Mayor, can I ask a question? Maybe I missed this in Sam's presentation, but I would like to have an understanding of where we're at with the appraisal. We continued this on the record 2 weeks ago for the express purpose of we thought that appraisal was going to be done by, or was this a month ago? Almost. Was it a month? Anyway, is it appropriate to ask
I think so.
where we are at with the appraisal?
Yeah, we have a draft of the appraisal. It's not finalized yet. So we're still working through that, and we're trying to come to an agreement, with the land trust for that option agreement.
Is there an approximate time frame on that?
I don't have an approximate time frame. I'm hopeful that if, continuance to 2 weeks from today, I think that will be a sufficient amount of time.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I go to open public comment? Sean, sorry.
Sam, good evening. On the site plan, it's page 1 of 3, day September 2024. You have the riparian setback are shown on there. And it's shown from mean high water mark, which kind of by looking at the aerial photography, it appears to be the edge of the water. And the mean high water mark is defined as the landward side of any riprap, and I don't know whether there's riprap along all of this. Maybe there's not in that city piece. But kind of this follow up on the question I asked down on the site about whether that measurement was taken from the landward side of riprap that might be along that edge.
I apologize, Tom. I would have to refer to Mark Phillips, the surveyor who collected the data for that ordinary high water mark. We could collect clarification on that question.
I mean, given that the setback defines the building envelope on the southern end there, that might be of some consequence, but thank you. That's all, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. It is at this time that I will go ahead and open up public comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Introduce yourself by name and your address for the record. Is there any public comment here in City Hall? Please raise your hand. Okay.
Hi there, Amy Trujillo, Wood River Land Trust. I just wanted to reiterate our comments that we have previously submitted in terms of we agree that the best use of that lot 1A is for access to the Howard Preserve and for protection of riparian habitat and public access. As Sam mentioned, we are continuing to work with the landowner on negotiations for that. And I do hope to have more of an answer within that 2-week timeframe about a potential option agreement. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Thank you. Any other public comment inside City Hall? Tom?
Tom Blanchard, 33 Lower Broadford Road. I wanted to make one comment. The city of Bellevue has benefited in the Howard Preserve by being given at least 4 parcels over time that has not cost them a dime. Outside money has provided all of this for the city of Bellevue. And I want to encourage the council to look at this as an opportunity, maybe to step up the line and make some contribution. And I want to make a suggestion as to where that might be and how it might work out. And I would look at the 75-foot radius on the 2 outside corners. if you look at that, it intrudes into the property on an 80-foot by 80-foot by about 35 foot. You lose 35-foot frontage building in a business zone where you can build to the property line. In a case down there where the Myers property moves the 50-foot, they don't move the eastward line, they move the westward line. And so you've added another 30 foot to that 35 foot that intrudes into that property. My estimate, and this is not an engineering estimate, I mean, someone should look at this, but I think they lose 57 feet on each corner. That's 114 feet on a 330-foot block. That's 30% of the land. And I would like you to make some sausage here in which you declare that property non-buildable and contribute this 114 feet by removing the radius requirement. And if nothing else, you give the land trust that value in their negotiations as a cash option. I think gives you some flexibility at no cost. But you have to give up your 75 radius on 2 roads that go nowhere. Thank you.
Thank you. See, no other hands inside City Hall. Are there any individuals on Zoom who would like to make a comment? Kristen Fletcher, we'll start with you.
Great, thank you. Kristen Fletcher, 200 North 4th in Bellevue. I would like to strongly support any action that extends the size of the Howard Preserve into this lot area. That southern part of the Howard Preserve is heavily used and heavily appreciated. I guess that's really all I have to say is that when I first moved to Bellevue, it was as if the city didn't know there was a preserve down there. And over the years that I've been here 12 years, I've seen that the city has really stepped up and begun to recognize how important and valuable a feature the Howard Preserve is to our community and also to the Wood River Valley. So those are my only comments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Florence, I see your hand raised. When you're, Florence, will unmute yourself first. Can't quite hear you. Amy, is there any way that you can unmute her without her having to do it? No. Florence, unfortunately, we can't hear you.
Can you read lips after all these? Yeah.
Any other public comments on Zoom?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, no. Okay, go ahead. Your time starts now. Go. Your name
Okay.
and your address.
Okay. Yes, it's the most appropriate use for that property. And it is a very unique property. We don't have, I mean, there is no other city in Blaine County that has 36 acres that borders the river and is has public access. So we need to extend the Howard Preserve to the south. And if it takes 2 weeks to do this, to get something going, I'm all for it. The Howard Preserve brings people into Bellevue. And now they're here, they shop for groceries, they go to the gas station, they eat at restaurants. I hope that the council can appreciate all of that and understands that it's just not like a city park. I mean, I see fishermen down there, I see children, I see women pushing their babies in strollers. I mean, I see everybody down there. It is a community place. And to change the subject just a second, if I have another minute, there are people from some Riverside estates mentioned last year what we do about parking. Well, I doubt if parking is going to change at all if this becomes part of the Howard Preserve, because since the Myers have been so generous in letting people walk across the property, my experience is that most people thinks it already belongs to the Howard Preserve. Also, we have 3 other parking areas, one at the Bellevue Bridge. We have Martin Lane, which is the most popular, and also Elm Street. So that coming in on Riverside Drive is really the most, it's the most complicated and the least used. So, and I think also people come there that aren't coming to the preserve because there's a couple of great swimming holes down in that area. And so it's not just people coming for the preserve. And I don't see that. I've been down there several times in the summer, and I rarely see more than 5 or 6 cars. As well as that whole area is closed in the winter. So that's my comment. Add this, find a way to make it add this to the Howard Reserve.
Can you please state your name and your address for the record?
Oh, I did, but I'll say it again. Florence Blanchard, 33 Lower Broadford Road.
Thank you.
She's been at them.
Any other comments on Zoom? I'm not seeing any others, so. If there are no other comments on Zoom or in City Hall, I will go ahead and close public comment. And I would ask Samantha if she would like time to respond to any of the public comment.
Samantha Stolnicker with Opal Engineering. I think I appreciate the public's enthusiasm. I think it's matched by the Myers and the desire to extend the Howard Preserve, and hopefully we can provide what the city needs to move past this step so we can move on to the next and make it official. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, council, you have the opportunity to ask any additional questions of the applicant staff. Or if any have any questions for more information at this time.
I have a question. If there was, if the lot line shift was approved and whatever conditions were accepted or not accepted, it does not preclude, it would not preclude the Myers from continuing to negotiate a deal, because it's a third party and it really doesn't have anything to do with us. So that it will not preclude their ability to negotiate a deal, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Regardless of if you continue tonight or make a decision, obviously if you make a decision to deny the project, we would halt negotiations as we've been proceeding currently. But if you make a decision to approve tonight, we would absolutely continue our negotiations with the interest.
Just a reminder, this is your last opportunity to ask questions before.
Would you continue with those negotiations if we did not approve those conditions?
I think that the challenge is what do we negotiate? In that case, there's no feasible parcel to transfer.
Sam, you made the comment that the way the current configuration would maybe prohibit, I think was the word that you used, future Howard Preserve extension. I'm not sure I understand that. I mean, couldn't a conservation easement be put on a part of a parcel, for example, from the canal west? And, yeah,
Yeah, I think prohibit maybe was too strong of a word. I think it would be very difficult, in the event that, you know, any of the 6 lots or all of the 6 lots were under different ownership. I think the benefit of the current condition today is that the Myers are a willing party and they control all 6 properties.
Any other questions before I close the public hearing?
Madam Mayor, can I make one more clarification? I wanna just speak back to Councilmember Davis's question about whether negotiations would continue, or sorry, maybe that was Councilmember Ovenoff. In terms of your decision tonight, if you decide to make a decision without knowing what the option agreement is or if it's possible, I just want to reiterate that the applicant is not comfortable with the condition that was drafted regarding that option agreement, so we cannot agree at this time for that condition of approval to enter into the option agreement prior to the final plat, just because there are still unknowns with the negotiations of the land trust.
And Mayor, if I may just ask one question of Sam for clarification on the waivers. Briefly, can you explain what those, I think there's 3? Possibly.
Yes.
Can you just briefly touch on what those waivers are that you are requesting, that the applicant is requesting from our code?
Yes, and there's, I just want to make sure that I have these correct. So the first waiver has to do with the alley improvements, and we have an exhibit in your packet that specifies what the standard street section is with a full asphalt section that's centered in the right of way. And what we're requesting, which is a slightly narrower offset gravel road section. So that's the first waiver. The second waiver has to do with a.
Can you just back up just one second? Sorry, and what's that width? Cause I believe I saw in an alley standard earlier today that the alley standard is 25 feet.
Councilmember Shager, you look at the city of Bellevue standard for an alley development is 25 feet?
I believe I read that somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe not.
The alley right of way standard is 25 feet, the alley street width is something less than that. So,
So the right of way adjacent to the subject property is 49 feet, so staff has interpreted the standard 50-foot city of Bellevue road section to apply, which is 22 feet of asphalt with 2-foot gravel shoulders and swales on either side for drainage. What we're proposing is a 20-foot gravel section with a swale on just one side, so it would shed to the, I believe we have it draining to the west. And that offset approximately, I apologize, I don't have that dimension of the offset from the center of the right of way to accommodate and retain and protect the existing transmission lines that follow the alley along the east side of the road.
Okay,
The right of way.
so that was one of them.
So the alley waiver is one of them. The second waiver requested was the intersection setback, so that the intersection of 2 streets. The city of Bellevue requires a 75-foot setback from the intersection of those 2 center lines. Given the very minimal chance that the 2 right-of-ways on the northern and southern boundaries of the property are ever to be improved for full street sections, due to topography challenges, the river, the canal, the applicant's requesting that this be waived, so that intersection or corner lot setback doesn't apply. And the third item, let me just make sure that that is correct here. I think the third one, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, has to do with in the original approval for the plat. There was a reference to building setback from the top of slope relative to the canal instead of what we've presented and discussed with the canal company, which is a 14-foot setback from the top of water or the top of the bank of the canal. So, basically that agreement would allow the owners to build up to within 14 feet of the canal instead of the top of the slope, which provides a little bit of extra building area.
With first putting the retaining wall.
Yes, and there's provisions in that private agreement with the canal company
With the
that speak
canal.
to specific structural engineering.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions at this time? I will close the public hearing. And we will move on to council deliberation and discussion on the application.
I know it's not the most efficient use of the council's time and the public's time either, for that matter. But if the applicant and the Myers family, remain in communication and consultation, negotiations with the land trust, and that's contingent on an appraisal, which appropriately so, then I think we are patient with that process and kind of let that play out a little bit further than it has, so that we can maybe incorporate that a little bit into our consideration. So I'll just say that I favor continuing. I know that agendas sometimes 2 weeks out or maybe already established, honestly. And so that might not be feasible, and sometimes those need to get reviewed. So if it takes 2 weeks still to get the appraisal, I think that's why we went a month this time and would need to do that again. But I would kind of hate to make a decision on this until we have that process play out, I guess.
Throw the baby out with the bathwater, kind of a thing.
Well, we might, I guess, if we make a decision, you know, that's.
Right, I agree.
I agree.
Suzanne?
I would like to suggest that as a council, we don't really dictate the use of the property. That we have certain rules that we can follow, that a lot of this seems to me to have been addressed by P and Z and the application of our rules. But I also hear from the applicant and the community that, you know, this configuration is actually desired. And according to, you know, P and Z and our planning committee, they've checked the boxes, they've established the conditions. I do not support the granting of waivers as a method of dealing with, you know, weak requirements or definitions or codes as a way to work around the conditions that are there to, you know, to put forth the needs and desires of the residents. I think that the properties in question for this application are less expensive than other properties, specifically because of the challenges presented by their location and the types of properties. So to me, you know, presentation of undue hardship, these are the actions of the owners. My house where I am, came with certain infrastructure and things that made it more expensive. So I paid for those things in a different way. I also don't think that waivers, serve Bellevue residents where we make exceptions for some, especially these types of waivers. I believe our ordinances and laws should always be written and applied in ways that serve all the residents and applicants equally. And we should apply them equally, not work around them. So I move to approve the application LLA 25-01 without any waivers, with the adoptions of the conditions as recommended by staff in the staff report, and with the addition of a condition that states the city of Bellevue assumes no responsibility or liability resulting from floodwaters in lot 1A.
Thank you. There's a motion on the table. I'm not hearing a second at this time. Motion dies.
Can I continue to deliberate?
Of course.
Do I withdraw it?
No, the motion just dies.
Okay.
So in my review of this application, as Suzanne stated, I think this is a desired configuration. I am reading through the conditions of approval that are suggested. I believe these are suggested from Brian's staff report on page 21, my page 21 anyways. And there are, out of the 7 conditions that I'm seeing, 6 of those conditions require something to occur prior to final plat approval. I also was prepared to add an additional condition that is similar to a condition that is on the Riverside Estates plat, and that condition reads that the city of Bellevue assumes no liability or responsibility for any damage resulting from floodwaters within this subdivision. So that would be an additional condition that I would suggest. Out of these 6 conditions that are asking for something to occur prior to final plat approval, several of them address the lot 1A building envelope. And there's no question in my mind. I think the best outcome for this property would be for this to go to become part of the Howard Preserve. I don't see lot 1A, which is the river lot, I guess the way I would refer to it. While it is business zoned, it's not ripe for business development. It sits right in the middle of a residential subdivision, and in my mind, any business, whether it's a seamstress or an accountant or an attorney's office, some low intensity use, it still, I think, is compromising the integrity of a built neighborhood. So there's no question in my mind that it's appropriate for this to become part of the Howard Preserve. I believe with the waiver request for relief from paving the alley, I am not, I'm not in favor of granting that waiver request. I think I could live with the waiver request for the corner lot circumference. And we have given this application at least 4 meetings that I'm aware of at this point. I understand the importance of trying to be patient and waiting a little bit longer. It sounds like there is a draft appraisal out there. But we have no guarantee that we're gonna see that in 2 weeks or another month. And I think we've spent plenty of time on this application. And I guess I would just like to hear from the rest of the council what their thoughts are on moving forward or not, or.
I'm not averse to postponing, but I don't see, I'm not sure that I really see the benefit to us in trying to decide. I mean, if, let's just push the clock forward and we're there, and they come back and say, either the appraisal wasn't high enough and Keith doesn't want to do it, but he still wants to go forward with the lot line shift or this application. Why does that matter to us, right? We still need to decide. And it either has merit now to do it, or it does not have merit. And basing as much as I want the property to like the highest and best use, absolutely, extension of the Howard Preserve. But I can't take away a landowner's right to his property. And this is where he's exercising his property rights. He's wanting to do a lot line shift. If he can get And if the Wood River Land Trust, God bless them, if anybody can do it, the Wood River Land Trust can do it. Can make things happen. But we can't, if we hold up and it doesn't come to fruition, again, where do we stand? And will they withdraw, do they withdraw that application then? And Keith goes back to the drawing board of what does he do with the property? I can't see that that would happen. So it either has merit and we do it, or it doesn't have merit and we don't do it. And I think that I agree, this is the best use of it, and they've gone through a lot of work. But of the requests for the conditions, I'm not averse to the 75-foot radius. I guess, but as far as that's approving that, except for the fact that on the grounds that those streets may never in the future go down there because of topography. I'm sure 30 years ago, 40 years ago, no one thought anybody could build on these lots because of the topography. And so we can't really, again, base it on that. So I don't know that, then that makes it not meet the merits of an undue hardship. And to adjust that. So, I feel like if we read it just the way it is, and we see it just the way it is, that it can be approved, but without. The only condition the only request waiver that I see being valid is the one where there's a negotiation with the canal company. And the change in the building, like where they could build up to as far as that 100-foot request, and where the canal company has agreed to allow it to be within 14 feet of the mound on the side of the canal. But the other two, I don't see, well, not in its full, so the other one, the paving, I think paving should happen. It doesn't have to happen like.
Condition 1, correct?
Yes, yeah, the paving should happen. And yeah, the next condition about the request for a modification of the 75.
Yeah, condition 3.
Yep. Not be allowed either.
The quarter lot circumference,
Should still
you're saying no on that waiver request,
Correct.
and you're saying no on the waiver request to not pave
Correct.
the section of alley.
Correct.
The other waiver request, the agreement with the canal company, you're in favor of.
Yes.
I would actually, I'm looking at it, to me, I think condition 1 and condition 3, I would be in agreement with that. Tom brought up a really great point when in his public comment about, and also when I asked him about just like the buildable space up there. But as for the condition of going down to the canals, I don't agree with that condition. So condition 1 is for, no building or structure shall touch the bottom left side bank. So I don't agree with approving that condition. Just, I feel, the canal, based off what other recommendations are from studies and the typography, I don't see that as, if there's a natural disaster, I'm just, if that makes me, just pretty hesitant to approve that. But looking at, condition 3 and condition
Jessica, can I
You mean
interrupt?
razor, sorry,
I know,
sorry.
it's
What,
like-
and they're all, I wish they said condition
I know.
1, 2, 3.
Which page?
I'm on page 18 and 17, so I guess, where I'm at is like this street should be improved, sorry, the alleyway should be improved, and then, so the only condition, yeah, sorry, it's, yeah,
I have put them up on the screen.
okay,
Would you
great,
like to
thank
go
you.
through,
Yeah.
one by one?
Yes,
Yes,
great,
please.
thank you.
Condition
Okay.
approval number 1. No building shall encroach into the space between the top of the eastern bank, elevation of the street or alley, or of the canal and east high water mark of the canal unless otherwise allowed per version 45 right-of-way agreement. The agreement shall be reported prior to final plat recordation.
Condition number 1,
Let me put a pause here. I feel like there's confusion between conditions and waivers. Are you
Okay, sorry.
referencing waivers or?
Sorry,
conditions?
I guess I believe the waivers.
Waivers, okay.
Correct.
So there are 3 waivers that we were discussing that, Diane reviewed with Samantha. And the three waivers that we have been reviewing are the alleyway improvement, being paved versus, gravel with the swale on one side.
Correct.
The intersection setback, which is that side 75 feet, and then the top of the slope, waiver, which would be a 14-foot top of the bank in conjunction with the canal company agreement that was provided in the packet. So those are the 3 waivers that we're referring to.
Correct, so
Okay.
so what I'm seeing, I guess, the only waiver I would approve would be the 75
the
foot.
corner radius.
Corner radius.
Can I just put out there that, and just to clarify what my stance was, is that I did not think that the applicant qualified for waivers based on undue hardship. So I don't know what flexibility we have, and maybe we need guidance on that, on picking and choosing where we apply undue hardship and where we do not. Right, so I just wanna, and I guess then we can move away from that and how you justify the application or, or of the waivers, but I don't know where we can, if you establish undue hardship and we accept that it's undue hardship, then where do we get to determine what waivers are or not appropriate if they've qualified under that criteria? So I just wanna also bring that to the forefront. I do think there are potentially some rules around what we can and cannot do, right? Does that make sense? I mean,
That's what I thought I had mentioned too, but the condition for the setback on the space at the top of the eastern bank is unless it's agreed to with the canal company, because that's really a canal company thing. That's not, like if that land went straight out and there was no canal, he could build all the way out. So,
Condition or waiver?
well, it's a waiver, it was a waiver, but
I
and
think
it's also a condition.
Yeah.
So, so then the other 2 are not, because they don't apply as hardship. Really, to be able to ask for them that way to get them waived. So,
maybe we should establish some sort of methodology. Do we wanna go through the waivers and say yes, no? And do you wanna go through the conditions and say yes, no? Or do you wanna tell me why you didn't like?
Well, I think
What mine-
we're going through the conditions
Is
right
it-
now.
And are we gonna agree yes, no, or what are we doing? Cause we've done this before.
Have a little clarification. These have been presented as waivers by the applicant. In my opinion, really only the street construction is a true waiver of city standards. The right of way or the canal, construction is based on comment provided from the canal company, and as a favor to the canal company being a good partner agency, we included that conditional approval of the previous entitlement. The applicant requested a variance from that in this in fact. I have worked with the canal company to find a workable solution with them. The corner lot setback is really an administrative determination, that based on the requirements of code. Those go to you when they're in reference to Title 11. Is this a corner lot or not? That is the question at hand on that. And so it's really based on the likelihood or possibility in the future of extending the Walnut and Chestnut streets beyond Lewis Lane. the third one, the road construction standards is the waiver request, and that is where you must follow the standards of 11-13-1 to determine undue hardship and all of that. Does that assist?
Was that clarifying? Okay.
Maybe just one, a question, actually a couple questions. In the staff report on page 3, which talks about condition number 4, it said the prior condition, and then it said applicant's proposed condition. And I don't see any difference between those two. So is there an intended difference?
There's a typo there.
There's no difference.
What's missing?
There was a slight difference. I thought it was building and structures or something originally.
I see, no, looks word for word the same to me.
I'm not sure.
Prior to approval of final plat, and it cites the exact same section.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't original. Yeah, it wasn't always.
You look in the application materials, specifically the applicant's narrative. The correct language is in there.
I think there's a word change.
All right, it's not inspect.
In the previous staff report, this was the word the same as well.
Yeah, the same, condition number 4, the requested waiver is the alley between Chestnut and Walnut shall be improved in accordance with the submitted site-specific alley improvements exhibit EX2 prior to approval of the final plat. That was the requested language. I apologize for the.
Can you say that one more time?
It's on those right there.
Paragraph 2.
Oh,
I
or
can't-
here.
I can't read either one of these, over Brian.
I can.
There it is. Yeah. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll go back to Suzanne's question about the methodology of how you guys would like to proceed. In your deliberation here, is there a way in which you like to review conditions or waivers? Or one of you, each of you kind of make your statement of how you'd like to proceed in order to keep deliberation flowing here?
Well, it seems to me as though we have a general consensus with respect to the 3 waivers.
I don't know.
I don't agree with that there's a general consensus. I think there's a understanding that there are 3 waivers to be reviewed. But I'm not seeing that there's potentially a majority agreement on each of those.
I no longer believe that there are 3 waivers.
I'm sorry.
I no longer believe that there's 3 waivers, according to what Brian just said, but but conceptually, those were the.
There are 3 waivers, they're just,
As a term of convenience, we call them
understood.
waivers.
Yeah,
okay, I
But
apologize.
the waiver standards really only applies to
2.
the
that one,
road
there's
construction.
road.
So. We are looking at conditions. And the waiver standards only apply to the road construction aspect of the conditions.
So do we want to agree that we don't want the waiver, the one waiver? Can we agree to that, or?
Which one?
There's only one.
One
that's
waiver.
The alley,
One
paving,
alley.
the paving of the alley, right?
Well, we were talking about street standards and I thought
No, I
perhaps that included the circumference.
I'm merely being a conduit. But he had said that is the
Starting with
only.
street standards is probably a good.
The street, there we are.
Tom,
I would say that I will say, I guess, that I'm not ready to talk about conditions of approval or waiver of conditions of approval. I mean, I can appreciate that. That may eventually be a conversation. But I think there are application problems that prevent us from even getting to that point in this conversation. And for example, in the staff report on page 2, when Brian is talking about condition number 3. And sort of at the bottom there's conversation about streets and versus alleys. And one of the comments says that every lot in a subdivision shall have a minimum of 20 feet of frontage on a dedicated public or private street. I would assert that none of these lots has 20-foot minimum frontage on a dedicated public or private street. Each of the proposed lots has more than 20 feet of frontage along the rights of way. Fair enough, the rights of way of maybe Chestnut or a Walnut, but there's a difference between a right of way and a street. And the requirement is that they have a dedicated public or private street. And that you, in a sense, or essentially, you would have to provide vehicular or pedestrian access to adjacent properties. And he goes on to say the right of way does not meet the definition of a street, and I agree with that. And I think that's a significant shortcoming to this application. And in order for these to be converted from just rights of way that were granted as part of the plat to a public street that provides vehicular access, that this council needs to review some kind of street opening proposals, some kind of proposal to say, yes, this is how we're going to open that street. I mean, we don't even know how the street down below, how wide it's going to be. They're talking about a driveway, but this is business owned property, and the kinds of things that are business zone property, and the kinds of things that are allowed in a business zone include, but are not limited to, business, professional, or medical offices, public buildings, gas stations, restaurants, bars, theaters, banks, motels, tourist uses, retail outlets, public utilities, repair and personal services, storage, public parking, garages, car washes, and churches. And I guess one thing that I would wonder is, are the surrounding landowners, were they informed that this is business property where those kinds of uses could possibly go at the end of the street at Riverside Drive? Don't know. Brian, I guess, could answer that question. But I think that even just on this street question alone, this application has shortcomings. Now, not that they can't be overcome in some way by council action to say, yes, we'll open this street and we'll allow this kind of thing, or no, we're not really inclined to open it for those kinds of uses, but maybe we open it for residential uses, which would require a rezone to open it for residential uses. But I think that is something that needs to be overcome before we really can get into the minutia of conditions of approval. And I was hoping not, maybe, that, anyway.
I think we're gonna have to have this deliberation either now or in another month. But can I continue?
of course.
So Tom, when you say open the street, are you referring to Lewis Lane, extension of Lewis Lane, or are you talking about
Down below.
the street down below?
I'm talking essentially about Chestnut, from the alley west, or Walnut from the alley west. And then the street down below, that's sort of it's a dedicated right of way. It's, referred to as an unnamed street. But I would refer to it as a right of way for very specific reasons and not a street, because it doesn't provide vehicular access consistent with Bellevue's code for a street. And so, all of those streets on all 3 sides, I think. There's not 20 feet of frontage along those rights of way.
And just because this is your area of expertise, I remember being in a council meeting last year where there was a lot line adjustment or a subdivision or something, and we were told that the use was of no relevance. And that they're strictly trying to, that these were simply lot line adjustments, and how they were gonna be used, were not relevant. And I'm not saying that's true or not true, But I don't know how at this early stage of breaking these things down into these three separate properties. That we could possibly, that a presentation could possibly delve into all of that, but to your point, Minutia, and I share your concerns with them. But how simply by the dividing of these lots could we possibly be prepared, nor could they be prepared to submit what could happen to maybe that bottom lot for the property, or is this an issue of agreeing, saying, yes, you may divide your property so long as you meet these conditions? Or are we supposed to be delving into, and there's all these other conditions, because you may do this, or this, all these other things are possible. I mean, I kind of thought that was the P and Z role of P and Z in planning to determine that, but what you described is a ginormous, to my mind, a significant undertaking, and is just to confirm, because I'll go to town reading every additional thing there is, but is that what we're doing? Do we have the power to apply those concerns in this, or is it for us to say, you meet the condition of dividing this property, we do not agree to this waiver, and based on the rules that we have currently, this is what applies? I'm really just trying to understand
Well, I think there's always a dilemma, if I may, in an application about whether you want to approve it or deny it, or whether you want to condition it. Okay, we'll approve it with the following conditions, and that condition, maybe that list of conditions can be a short list and all's well, or it can be a long list. This one, isn't necessarily long, but it involves rather significant consequences. And so that's a decision I guess the council has to make, is whether we want to either up or down, or up, but with this list of conditions. And maybe before we get too far into the list of conditions, just kind of mention those things. And when it talks, and I appreciate the comment about, is this really our business? And I would say, the P and Z made a recommendation to us. The decision is ours to make. And the definition of a adjustment of lot lines, talks about parcels of land between parcels of land which do not reduce the area frontage with depth or building setbacks of such lots. Well, all these lots have frontage currently. All 6 of them have frontage. And so you could say that with this reconfiguration, now they have frontage along an alley. So, that's a tricky thing, but I think that the city has to kind of acknowledge that there's some kind of frontage because the lots exist. But that's not true of the western lot. And the way it's redesigned. And so, yeah, I think it's the council's prerogative to get into those details and that minutia. And it's important for the council to do that, honestly, to make sure that whatever it results from this project or application is well done.
And I 100% concur, but I'm wondering, are we missing some other process, right? We've been at this there's all this other stuff that also, and just so you know, I love details, so I'm just wondering if we have a failure of process here, that we can't get through this, that there's such a level of detail that you're delving into, they've delved into, P and Z has delved into, that we can't get through any of this, and it's taking hours every time we look at it. Is there some other way we should be going about it?
Well, if there's any kind of failure of process, I would say the failure of the process has been not dealing with whether these streets are open streets or not.
Yeah.
And if they're not open streets, then you don't have frontage. If they are considered open streets, then you do have frontage. I don't see how they could be considered open streets, but there isn't in our code really a process for doing that. But I think, you can create a process that's fair and appropriate to deal with that issue. And then once you've dealt with that issue, then you can kind of come back and deal with some of these other details, in my opinion.
Well, and I actually concur. So is there a way we could return some of the work to P and Z or to Brian with these recommendations, saying we need these determinations? I feel like there's a lack of process that we got all the way to this point with all these questions, or the difficulty of going through all these pages. So is there some way we can get clarification or standardization or definitions that to your point, can we ask that these certain things be better defined so that we have points of reference that, like you said, is this an open street or not? Is there something we could say? we need this answer or
Well,
Or-
you know, I think that the count, and this is of course subject to council and Rick's views, that on its own initiative, it could evaluate this street question, honestly, and decide, yeah, these are appropriate streets to open for the purposes of providing frontage along these lots, or they're not. You know, the only thing that in the state code that relates to that is there's some determination about public good is, you know, by opening a street. And so it's, you know, rather straightforward, I guess, in that respect, and, but. And then questions have come up previously about this zoning, you know, I don't know that really it's the intention of the applicant to develop this as a business property. And that, you know, maybe the zoning should be changed to something more appropriate, honestly. But we don't wanna hold, you know, I mean, necessarily hold up an application for that, but it is of consequence what kind of use goes there. You know, if it's one of those uses that listed, that's kind of a big deal to the neighborhood and probably inappropriately zoned, honestly.
I agree on that, but are we now allowed that these people's property have come to us and it's zoned as it is, and they make an application and we say, we don't like it, we're gonna change the zoning, are we able to do that?
Well, no, they're entitled to the zoning that exists if that's what they want. I don't know if that's what they want.
So as part of what you're thinking is that there's an opportunity to negotiate the outcome, that we should delay and delving into this any further until the application is better formed, or?
Well, I guess maybe that was part of my rationale for saying we should let the process between the private parties
Okay.
potentially play out, because maybe it will play out in a way that helps us.
Relieves us from having to.
You know, I mean, as Mr. Blanchard said, it'd be nice if there was some, you know, sausage making, but we're not really in a position to do that, and I don't think in this kind of application. And so that makes it difficult to do, but, you know, we can't all sit down around a table and say, hey, let's iron this out.
But maybe we could give them some time to make their own sausage?
Well, possibly, I mean, possibly, and maybe that's the benefit of this conversation, is they're, you know, kind of know some of the things that are on people's minds in a way that they haven't known before.
Well, I'm wondering if there's a way to craft a condition that would require this dilemma with regard to the 20 feet of frontage on a dedicated public or approved private street, if there's some way to craft a condition that would allow us to move forward, with a condition being that they iron out what that 20 feet of dedicated frontage is, whether it, whatever you want to call it, an alley or a street or a private street.
I mean, I think we have to kind of iron that out as a council, though, it's a public
yeah.
street. You know, so they're not really in a position to maybe suggest things, but I don't know if they're in a position to resolve that question.
That you think Lewis Lane is a public?
No, I'm talking about Walnut on the north and Chestnut on the north and south, and whatever exists on the southwest.
Brian, can I ask you a question? So long-term thinking, we've been talking about alleyways and possibly opening those up, like thinking about more walkable Bellevue long-term. So what would be the difference if we opened or closed the street with kind of some of the ideas that went around in like the strategic planning in Bellevue long-term? And seeing that if it's technically an alley, like how does that space fit in with our long-term future if it was opened or closed? Cause I don't know typically how that works.
When Councilmember Bergen is referring to opening a street, he's
Yes.
meaning the undeveloped right of way that is grass and dirt, right?
Okay,
And then
okay.
converting that into a public street.
Got
That's
it, okay.
The opening of a street.
Okay. Got it.
There is no proposal to change the drivability of Lewis Lane.
Thank you.
I just wanna check, we are in deliberation now, so. The back
If you would
and forth
like to get
question.
more new information,
Okay.
you will need to reopen the public hearing. and accept
Exactly.
new-
Exactly, so it looks like there is a comment from the applicant, but because we're in deliberation, if we want new information, I will have to reopen it.
Do we have a plan greater than seeing if anyone else can make sausage? That we can accomplish, do we think now? Or should we perhaps respect the applicant's right to continue this and see what they come back with? Is that what you were proposing earlier?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm hearing from the council some desire to move forward and make a decision tonight, and I am hearing from the council some desire to continue. So I think deciding now would, either continuing or coming to a decision this evening is the two sides of what I'm hearing from the council.
Can I ask a question then? Is a continuation of another 14 days going to give us the result that we're looking for? I guess I would like some assurance that that's what's gonna happen, and I don't think the applicant can give that to us.
Our next meeting's the 14th.
It is, the next meeting's the 14th, so we do have a 3-week
A
window,
3-week
just
window.
with the way that the meetings played out.
Or can I add that even if they come back. Again, the very first point, they come back and they work out a deal, or they don't work out a deal.
We're right
Does
there.
does that change the requirement for the waiver on the alley? Does it change the fact that there isn't, that those roads are not, don't extend down beside the property, give them the 20-foot frontage on a street? It still won't change those things.
Is
I
that
mean,
necessarily true?
Huh?
I'm wondering
Well,
if
yeah,
that's
because
necessarily.
we're not gonna open up those streets in the next 3 weeks.
Well, we don't have an application to do that.
Oh, I know, and that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying, so we can't do things, there's not, and we're not gonna do a zone modification. Or we don't have a plan, nobody's sending this back to P and Z for a zone modification.
Well, and it's like you said, just because we get the appraisal back in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 10 days. That number may not be a number that the applicant can live with. In which case, we still have this application before us.
And is it gonna be before us to decide, so is that,
Rick, are you there?
I think I hear him snoring.
He's there.
Hey, Rick.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the question?
Forget about it.
I'm not sure what my question is. Is there a way that we can craft a condition to address, this 20 feet, is that what the 20 feet of street frontage? Is there a modification that we could do to condition number 3, I think is what I was looking at? That would just require these guys, you guys figure it out, you guys iron it out.
Are you saying you guys, are you saying the applicant?
Yes, I'm
And
saying,
staff?
pardon me, yes, the applicant to solve this wrinkle without putting us in the middle of it. That
Well,
didn't make
I
sense.
Is the 20-foot a standard, a city standard that they have to comply with? You need to decide that. Or does, repaving the alley make you feel better about not having 20 feet of frontage on
Mayor,
that?
Councilmember Shea, can I interject? So the 20 foot of street frontage is in reference to lot 1A,
1A.
which is the western lot. It's currently not accessed by any developed street. I
And so,
had been under the assumption that the plat note saying that the street needs to be opened up prior to building was sufficient to satisfy that requirement. If you guys do not feel that is sufficient, ask for a roadway. But
So that condition does exist. Rick, I'm sorry, you were saying something.
Yeah, well, I think I mean, lot 1A might be a moot point if the applicant and the land trust can come to some agreement.
But as I understood what you were saying, Tom, is that it says 20 feet of frontage on a dedicated public or private street. It does not say public or private alleyway. Right? Is that what, I mean, I just wondered if that's what you meant, that there's no street, it won't have any street frontage.
Well, I think
So-
that was kind of and Brian was focusing on lots 2 and 3, but that was sort of his.
No, he was on one. Okay.
Well, in his comments about condition 3, I think that the primary focus was on this alley versus street debate, and he said, well, he, referred to those definitions and as relevant to that discussion. I guess that's what I read. Now, I think it's also relevant to 1A. I think it's relevant to all 3 of them, honestly. But if 1A gets kind of resolved in some way, then there's other kinds of things. Maybe you can figure out an acceptable solution to those, because most of the conditions honestly relate to the lots that are up on the bench, right? Setback from the canal and the alley street debate and the corner setbacks and those kinds of things. So if 1A gets resolved in an acceptable way to the applicant and the land trust, then those other conditions maybe can be addressed in an acceptable way.
Isn't that what I just must miss that.
Well,
Isn't that what I'm like, that is still what we're doing, and I don't understand.
that isn't, I guess, what I was
Okay.
suggesting. I was suggesting it applies to all 3 of those lots and currently doesn't exist. And so if it doesn't, it's not there, then the proposed lots don't comply with the code.
And so I guess one of the dilemmas that I have is that for Clearwater small motor parts or whatever his business is called there, and like Manny Guerra's building, that section of road acts as an alley. It acts as an alley. Can it be an alley for one property and a street for another? I'm not seeing that possible. So,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
so if we're talking about access on a dedicated public street for lots 2A and 3A. So now we're calling it a street for those guys, but it's an alley for these other already developed properties. That's just something that I'm trying to. That's, I guess, why I'm feeling like if we could just get creative with one of these conditions, modifying condition number 3 or whatever, so that it says that, okay, I'll just read it. Prior to the submittal of the final plat application, the applicant shall construct all required improvements, including improving the roadway within right of way to the east of the subject property. There's a bunch of words. From Walnut Street to Chestnut Street to the specifications provided in the alley improvements exhibit attached to these findings. So could that condition be modified to add language that says there shall be 20 feet of dedicated pavement, roadway, whatever we want to call it, to lots 2A and 3A. And just, we've added that as a condition to address that frontage. Go forth and make frontage. sausage, whatever you wanna call it. Brian?
Driving Councilmember Shay, are you suggesting that
I'm
they
not sure what I'm suggesting, Brian.
outer 20 feet
The whole
from
alley.
Chestnut and Walnut?
Say that again?
Are you suggesting that they pave 20 feet in from Chestnut and 20 feet in from Walnut?
No, I'm not suggesting that.
That is how I'm
So
understanding.
can I clarify what I think you're suggesting?
Please.
The condition that they are referring to in their exhibit, is 20 feet with one swale. And are you, that proposes gravel?
Reading it in a different place.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
I'm just looking at the exhibit. Are you proposing that the gravel be pavement?
Yes.
But it will still be an alley, it'll be 20 feet with one swale,
Yes,
that the applicant has
20
proposed.
feet wide.
20 feet
20
wide.
feet
Yeah, not
wide,
20.
not 20 feet long,
So-
20 feet wide.
In reference to the attached exhibit, you are just,
What
saying-
page, what page are you reading from?
I'm reading your condition on page 21, item 3, and then I'm referring to the visual attachment we have from Mobile Engineering.
Okay,
With the proposed alley section plan view. It's in color. Right here. Which one you can put it? And the proposed material is gravel, and you are saying you would want the material to be paper.
that's what yes,
Okay.
I will, well, I'm just gonna throw something out there. Unless Suzanne, you wanna take another stab at it?
No, I have not prevailed in my,
It happens, that's years, you just get better at.
it's my life, Eric.
So just to
Go for it.
You please go ahead, Diane.
Someone call.
Mayor?
go for it. If there was something, if you wanted to take a stab at it, I would love to see what you were gonna say.
I'm, okay, let's just try and do this. I would move to approve. Application LLA 25 01. Submitted by Judy and Keith Myers, represented by Sam Stallnecker of Opal Engineering. To address the 3 waiver requests. Waiver. I don't know how they're numbered. The waiver with respect to relief from paving the alley, I would deny that waiver request. The waiver request for the agreement with the canal company with respect to the width of the. I'm talking the what?
The depth of lots, one.
The depth,
2A and
the
3A.
depth of lot 2A and 3A, be denied. Or excuse me, approved. And,
Accepted, yeah.
and the waiver with respect to the, corner circumference, be approved as well. With respect to conditions 1 through 7, as noted in Brian Parker's staff report, I would suggest to modify condition number 3, 1 through 8. 1 through 8.
Man, the wrong one.
This one page 4 is not that page 4.
What page is that, Brian? That you have?
21 and 36.
That's what I was looking at.
Yeah,
Page
there's
21.
7.
And I have 7 conditions of approval.
Brian has 5, has page 5 up.
Page
and
5
has
is staff
8
report.
in the staff report. And we have multiple similar.
Okay, all right. So I am looking at 8 conditions of approval,
Which one should I be on?
The one starting on page.
page,
So page 4 or 5 is where it should be.
yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Sorry, Diane.
Okay, so having addressed the waivers, moving on to the conditions of approval. I suggest a modification to condition number 3. That states prior to submittal of the final plat application, the applicant shall construct all required improvements, including improving the right of way within the roadway within right of way to the east of the subject property from Walnut Street to Chestnut Street to the specifications provided in the alley improvements exhibit attached to these findings. Further, there shall be 20 feet of dedicated paved access to serve lots 2A and 3A.
No, that the whole.
And second for discussion.
Second.
What did I miss?
It just sounds
I
like
tried.
the conditions that the alleyway.
Hold on, there's a motion on the floor.
But
and
I think we need a second for
Hold on.
discussion.
I seconded it.
No, she seconded it.
Oh, a
not
second.
second. for
Oh, I thought you said, I
discussion.
thought you needed a second, then I retract my second. So they
You would
can
either retract your second or you can second for discussion.
I will retract my second.
There's a motion on the floor. Would you like to second for discussion?
I would like to second for discussion.
Okay,
So
discuss.
that I just wanted clarification that that is provided, that it meets the standards, specifications provided in the alley improvements exhibit. But including pavement, a 20-foot width of pavement, the entire length of the alley. The way you just stated it again sounded like it was 20 foot in.
Yeah,
Okay, I just wanna make sure. So I would like that to be so noted.
Amy, have you got that?
I think I do. I think Zoom does too.
Yes, we're-
Are we ready for a roll call?
Request a friendly amendment to include language to direct staff to prepare findings of fact reflecting this decision.
And may I ask a question from, are you guys, denying the waiver because you're not finding that there's undue hardship due to special characteristics or conditions? Or that, this, waiver is detrimental to public welfare, health and safety? Or injurious to the property or owners in the immediate area? Because those are kind of the
It does
standards you
not-
have to look at.
It does not meet undue hardship. Yes, thank you.
Okay, are we ready for
Roll
roll
call.
call? Alright.
Are we now?
Wait a second, I thought we were gonna add the condition that Brian just asked for, that we direct staff to draft findings of fact, conclusions of law and decision.
Yeah.
Um,
Reflecting this decision based on the record provided.
So amended.
Councilmember Bergen,
No,
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Mahoney,
No,
sorry, Councilmember Obanoff,
Yes.
Councilmember Reed,
No.
Council President Shay.
yes.
Councilmember Davis, can you repeat what you said? I'm sorry, how did you?
I said yes.
Yes.
So
Okay.
3 and 3.
Okay, the mayor's vote is the tiebreaker. So Mayor Giordani.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
You made the decision.
We're gonna, at this time, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess, just to allow people to go to the bathroom, and we will reconvene and start with our presentation on the wastewater facility from our public works director.
do it. Oh, there we go.
Get a chocolate chip.
Oh, yes, I did.
We'll go ahead and bring this back at 7:30 PM. I will call the meeting back to order.
Oh, yeah.
We'll open
Oh,
up
we're going, so.
item number 6. Our presentation, wastewater facility project status report, Chris Johnson, Public Works Director.
Share the screen, sorry.
All right, good evening, council. Chris Johnson, Public Works Director. Here it's kind of a before what the plant was looking like, what happened to the plant, and where we're trying to get to. What's been done so far? We had to replace all the electrical wiring. These main control panels were down on the basement. We completely were submerged. We had wastewater come up 6 inches above where the main catwalk is. So all these have been replaced. We pulled them up from the basement and we installed them up on the catwalk. So in the future, if something else were to happen, we wouldn't have to replace these panels. The main CPU and SCADA, all those had to be replaced. That is full of waste from the bottom of it. Right now, the electrical, all the wires are in. The SCADA team is in there today, but they're slowly piecing together the different pieces we are needing. We're not sure exactly how long they're gonna take on the SCADA. We have all the parts, I think, now, and it's just getting their team in there to get everything operational. But we have to also wait till they get the electrical finished so they can get everything to talk to one another. We replaced most of the motors and pumps, had to be either refurbished or replaced. Those are all back installed now. Those are the primary pumps. Those have to be replaced and rebuilt. They're back installed now. We put in a hydrogen sulfide and an ammonia sensor. Let's make sure we don't have the H2S, any potential hazardous gases that are coming off of the plant. Right now we have this on the back of the plant. It would be on the north end. It'd be above where the mixers are. I mean, well, what the lagoons are operating right now, it may not be the best location, but when the plant is in operation, that is the best location, most likely area where we would have ammonia and H2S coming out. All the flow sensors are currently, I think we got them installed. We got some more this next weekend that we'll be installing. And then all day schedule 80. Had some leaks, had some cracks. Some of the stuff had been replaced with just wrapped up electrical tape. So we're replacing all the piping with HDPE. Give us a longer time period and a higher PSI rating. You can see the sensor and flow meters there. Those all had to be replaced due to corrosion inside there. We have them all at the plant and we will be installing them here in the next 2 weeks. Like I said, due to corrosion leaks, the schedule 80 being replaced. More of the flow meters, those are being installed and we have all those. We're just waiting for the actuators. Those are the last big parts that we're going to be needing. It was 12-14 weeks. They've actually upped the timeline. We may be having them here in the next 4 weeks. So we're looking forward to having them. And that'll be the final pieces. Then we can get all the electrical wiring hooked up and SCADA hooked up and hopefully get Veolia out here to help us bring it online. So we're waiting on the 5 actuators. So that timeline I said just changed. We've been coordinating with Veolia and Great West Engineers for providing us engineering support and how we're going to bring it back online. So it's just not like starting your car. There's going to be some steps needed and there'll be a series of steps to bring it online. And then they're going to ask to help us clean the membranes, train our team on proper maintenance of them, and we should be up and running here. We do have some other issues after we get it all up and operational, but those are things that we're gonna have to work on into the future. So the main thing is trying to finish up getting it online, identify if there are any other pumps, motors, or mixers out in the trains that are gonna need any work, but we're we feel pretty confident that we've got those working and they're already using those to, we're washing the membranes right now. So we're taking all the sewage water that was in there, clearing it in the lagoon, and we're adding fresh water into the membranes. So they stay wet and we'll have a quicker turnaround time of getting them clean and operational. Still issues with headworks. That's one project that we may have to rehab now. The H2S that comes from the 5 miles of pipe is built up and it's corroding the inside of the concrete there to the point where we can see the rebar. And we'll need to do some refurbishing on that and put in some a new liner, kind of like the ones that we've done at the lift stations. We'll still need to figure out our dewatering issue and getting our truck running again. And that's about the last big piece once we actually get back into operation, moving our water and sludge. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Where does the sludge go when you're done with it?
In the past, we've been taking up to Ohio Gulch into the drying beds up there.
Okay.
Can you please state your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Derek Reuter. What? 162 Glendale Road.
We would like to get it back or see if we can renegotiate with Wynn and use it in as biosolid composting.
Council, do you have any questions for Chris Johnson on his presentation? Diane?
I do have a question. Chris, could you explain to me when you say with this truck, we still need to figure out what issues, are they mechanical? Are they new tires? What are they?
Yes, you can see on the back of the trailer.
I see dead tires.
The tires are rotting away from it. They haven't had that truck running since March of 23, as far as I'm aware. I know Nate's tried to get it started a few times, but hasn't had any luck. So I just need to get a heavy truck mechanic down there to take a look at it and see what it's going to cost us to get it in operation.
So what does that entail? Just a phone call to a mechanic to get?
Yes, but a mechanic that
Is qualified.
understands that type of truck. Yes,
Certainly. Thank you.
So how have we been hauling the sludge?
with the lagoon system, the sludge stays in the pond, and so every 3 to 5 years, you would come in and you would take the sludge out and take it somewhere else. But since we just replaced the liners, we're only on year 2 of using it this way, so we've got another 3 to 5 years if we had to, or 2 to 3 years if we had to. But we would like to get a dewaterer, which takes a what do they call it? A composite material that it would keep all the water going back into the lagoons and into our RI basins instead of just having the water mixed in with our sludge. The sludge, or I forget the name of the term, polymer stuff, and not like a plastic, but it turns it into a soil. Be dropped off for biosolid, for composting, or again, put up to the drying beds, but we're not hauling. We could actually just get a roll off and it would just fill it up with the dry sludge, and we'd have it hauled away from like by Clear Creek every 2 to 3 weeks instead of having to make 2 or 3 runs a day in the truck.
Are we talking about current operations or future operations?
Future. I was just gonna say, the intention of the status report now is just to kind of focus on, since the failure of the plant going down in 23, where we currently are. And so a lot of that would be future plans after we get the current plant, our plant back online. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Derek.
Go ahead.
So you're thinking now 4 weeks, so maybe by the 1st of August, these actuators and pump controls will be there.
That's what we're hoping, and we're talking to Avili already. Bryson's reached out to them, and we're planning end of August to see if we can start getting everything up and operational.
So that they might be able to clean and treat the membrane, so those are functional sooner, I guess, maybe than you're looking to get it operational.
I mean, we could still find other issues, so I'm not gonna put a hard timeline on it, but our timeline has sped up. We are getting down there more. And, the equipment is now coming in, more readily.
And they can work at the same time that you're waiting for the actuator, so you can get that closer to done, I guess, with the membranes.
Question I have is, what can we expect it to, conditions to be like the rest of this summer? And last, since we met, been 3 weeks? So the last 3 weeks is not been, I haven't smelled it very much. Les, can you speak? Have you, is that better for you?
I don't know what was done to get rid of some of the smell, but it has been better.
Yeah,
But this doesn't pertain to that.
yeah,
Well,
it pertains, for us, it does. Well, I mean,
This repair, this is about redoing a system that's not currently working.
Yeah, no.
It's not about treating what you're talking
no,
about.
yeah, exactly, but that affects what everything's going on here.
No.
And we, like I said, he lives right next to it. And I live about a half a mile, quarter mile from it. So we get a fair share of that. And so we just want to know what that means for us that have to live next to it. You know, what are we expecting as far as what are the situation gonna be? It's gonna be good for next
basically,
summer, or less for summer, and then we have to worry about it when it gets cold again.
No.
Changing temperatures.
I think we should be set up for success now. I mean, we're trying to still treat the lagoons with some extra chemicals, some oxygenators specifically, and more aeration. You know, when this comes back online, we've basically rebuilt this plant. And so it's gonna go back into old, with the operation was before, so it should be, you know, pre-23 smells it back down there. And,
So the smells aren't from the lagoons, and this process removes the lagoons, is that right? When
well, we
transfer
still
them?
have polishing ponds, which are what the lagoons are. They were designed part of the process, so everything goes through the membranes. And then they get treated again with chlorine, and they settle a little bit to get more of the fine debris and stuff down to the ponds. And they'll go still in Lagoon A it starts, and then they'll go to Lagoon B, then the Lagoon C, and then the water comes back out either to the RI basins, or else it'll go to Dan Brown's pivot out there and be land applied.
So when the facility comes back online, that will resolve the overload of the lagoons currently.
Yeah, we may have to dredge the lagoons again.
I think that's the,
and-
do we have to decommission then those lagoons? No.
No, they still stay in operation as the polishing ponds, so it'll go through the plant, it'll go through the mixers, and then they go into B. They settle for, 5 to 10 days there, and then into, B and C. And so by the time they get down to the far one, it just helps us get to our, permit requirements of being under, so much nitrate, so much phosphorus taken out of it before it's applied, into the land.
So for the sake of the Bellevue Triangle, so they have the timeline, this comes back online. And let's just assume that we don't have to roll back or whatever rollback plans and all that are. If we have successful, switch it on, the sewer starts now going through the plants. And that alleviates the overload in the lagoons, how quickly?
I mean, we'll still have water in the lagoons, it'll be a process of more water going in there as more comes out, and so I don't know how long it's gonna do a changeover, because it's not just, we're not just dumping them and then refilling them back up, so it could be a couple, it could be a month before we get back down to a normal levels in the polishing ponds. And again, we may have to dredge them next spring, we may have to do a few other things, we still have to do seepage tests on cell B or cell A. Cell B is due for relining here in the next probably 5 years. We have to do some modifications to our RI basins because they're not like level. There's humps and there's a pivot wheel that's going through it, so the water isn't being spread out and going straight down. It'll pile up in pockets. So there will be continued maintenance and challenges. I mean, there hasn't been maintenance and stuff done on this plant in years, and that's where we got to where we're at.
I'm not debating that, but I think, when we're trying to provide timetables and we're discussing kind of apples and oranges to a certain extent, that the stench comes from the lagoons, also understanding what our maintenance and dealing with those lagoons is gonna be. And
The lagoons are part of the entire facility, so
Yes, they are, but they're being used as lagoons, whereas they were really supposed to be polishing ponds. And the overloading capacity of those entities are part of the
Just to
problem.
note, the city operated on those lagoons and wrapped up infiltration basins prior to the installation of the biomembrane reactor pipe. So it was always lagoons. Well, when it was originally put in the eighties, it was lagoons and rapid infiltration basins. I just want to make sure you.
No, I
understand
do.
that that's not-
I'm sorry.
I don't want you
I wanna
to
focus on
mislead us
capacity
into something else.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so they have the ability to treat wastewater. They're not currently set up for it because we got off of using them. And installed a new plant, and then the plant went offline, so then with it going offline, we're now using, that's our backup operation regardless, it's gonna be maintained as our backup operation for times when we have heavy winter snow and we've got an extra, or we got any infiltration that goes into the collection system and it gets down to the wastewater treatment plant and they're seeing flows high, they can divert it over into those the basins. And so that's how it operates. And yes, obviously, it hasn't historically, one of the issues for Bellevue is management and maintenance. And so going forward, this is a priority and I see us stepping back up and ensuring that this is not something that's gonna happen again, so.
Yes, Chris, did you hear back from DEQ about the testing they did recently? There wasn't sewer testing or a report back from DEQ about.
They had a site visit, they're still developing a report they're gonna give us on, you know, where they wanna see us do improvements or whatever, but it was
Not bad.
over majority positive. They said that there are parts of the plant that before have mold, had stuff growing on it, and this is the first time they've seen this type of cleanliness, and looking forward to it being back operational.
The current process that we're utilizing has been approved by DEQ with the understanding that the city's making the necessary repairs to get back online. There is regular communication with DEQ as well, around from our licensed operators around this process, so. But they did come out recently.
Yeah, well,
as
that's what I
part
was
of
wondering, so
as
they
part
were.
of a,
And we were asked about
a couple year inspection. that
Every
they
5
always
years,
do.
they do a sanitary survey basically. And they just review everything, see if everything's operational, what type of maintenance, they go through all our records, all of our sampling, so we do weekly sampling for coliform, and then we do a composite sample once a month, that tests everything from our everything, nitrates, phosphorus, whatever.
And all of those submissions have been as expected, right? We're not out of compliance on any of those.
No, we do have some exceedances. I'm just trying to keep the chlorine levels high enough in the ponds to get a residual. We have missed those, but we've called DEQ that day, once we get back the results. They understand that the way we're trying to operate this can have challenges, so, but we're not out of compliance.
No, I wasn't speaking of compliance. I just recalled that Bryson had typically had to send in reports that we were not necessarily of unusual findings, certainly in the past and apparently not currently. So, but yeah, those were questions from the triangle. Thank you.
Yes.
The headworks, is that a potential issue of concern? I mean, it still needs to be rehab in line. Is that something that can be done?
It can be done in a short amount of time. It's just bringing in a lining team. They have this polymer spray that kind of a orange plastic coating, or they have a purple one now too, but just putting one of those contractors in there, seeing how much they have to chip away at the old cement. They have some epoxy and other things that can build in first to fill any cracks or missing chunks of concrete, and then they put the liner in, so it wouldn't be any longer than a week, I would believe.
Thank you.
I have one more question, just, and maybe it's not yours to answer, but if we start getting bombarded, if smells come up and something's failing, who do we talk to and where do we go to find some information?
Tom Bergen is our city liaison.
Okay.
He will be kind of the communications arm. Our next line item is revolving around a project management contract. And so Tom will have liaison access to our public works director and the project manager if that contract is approved as well. So we have identified that Tom will field those communications and then disperse them as necessary and return communications to the group.
Okay.
Tony?
Yes. I wanted to ask a question, you might have answered it earlier, but have the electrical panels that Bryson described as potentially very hazardous during overflow events like this, have they been elevated to the point where they would not jeopardize human safety?
We raised them, correct?
Yes, they were down in the basement. I guess it could have caused a problem, but yeah, we've got them up out of the basement. They're now up on the rails of the catwalk. So if there was another event where they were plant flooded, they would be up out of the sludge.
Yes, we did raise them.
Thank you.
You said it came up over the catwalks, 6 inches?
Yes.
Okay. And it's above that, hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay. Thank you so much. I see that Andrew Kimball's been popping on and off of Zoom and he's part of our next agenda item. So I will move us on to new business. Item 7C, it's a consideration of a resolution number 75-17 authorizing the mayor to execute a consultant agreement for professional services with Great West Engineering for wastewater facility project management assistance. I will take the lead on introducing this, and if he comes back on, I will try and bring him into the discussion. So, oops, sorry, just when we get there. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, what are you handing me?
Oh, for my comments, I figured it was easier
Okay.
to pass it out.
All right, I will go ahead and introduce this topic. With a desire to prioritize getting the wastewater facility back commissioned as soon as possible and understanding our staffing limitations and the limitation of our public works director being pulled in a lot of directions with different departments, different projects we have going on. I felt it was very important to bring in the project management services of Great West Engineering, who has been working in engineering capacity in our wastewater facility, is familiar with it, has been consulting with us to date, came on in the fall of 2023 and was part of the discussion with Chris Johnson on going for an ICRIMP insurance claim in that fall of 23. So I have asked Andrew Kimball from Great West Engineering to put together a concept of what the project management support would look like, with the intention that the scope of this project is focused on getting the plant back online and the facility. And when I speak to that, in particular, the membrane bioreactor treatment system that we are currently bypassing. And so the deliverables of the scope of this work would be establishing a schedule. We've heard a lot about this will be here in 4 weeks, this will be here in 6 weeks, all of that is helpful, but if we looked at it in the context of a full schedule of getting the facility back online, I think that would be incredibly helpful. So tasking Great West with that, an understanding of outstanding repairs needed for the MBR site, project cost updates to the city, which would then flow out into the community, based on the manufacturer's quote for materials, and project status updates twice per month, so that we can stay in good communication with our neighbors and the citizens of Bellevue, to help them understand where we are at in the process. I do see Andrew Kimmel is online. Andrew, can you hear me? And would you like to pop in and kind of introduce any information about your proposal and contract and moving forward in the project management capacity for the wastewater treatment facility?
Yeah, so if everyone can hear me, our approach to this was really just to be an extension of the city itself. With all the work that Chris is doing and Bryson, the two operators, and then all the contractors, plus all the other work going on around the city. The city council and the mayor wanted to make sure that everything was being presented to the general public. And then also just keep everyone moving along the same path. As you guys probably heard already with Chris, there's a lot going on out at that treatment plant, trying to get everything up and running. Schedules can slip, materials can be delayed in getting shipped, which can then cause installation delays, and different pieces of equipment have to be installed along that path in order for the next step to happen. So our approach to this is just to be in pretty close communication with Chris, which we have been throughout this process. But more than anything, just kind of memorialize it, put it in writing, give the city council an update so that when the general public are asking what's going on, where are we at with that, as well as DEQ, it's written and documented so that if there is a delay in some type of shipment or an installation because something else happens, throughout the city, and guys just aren't able to work out at the plant, that it's documented and everyone is on the same page for how to get back on track and keep it moving forward. And then another part with that is there's a lot of different parts and pieces that have had to be found to fix the plant, as well as the long-term operation of it. So our approach to this is keep every piece of equipment that is functional. And then as we find parts and pieces that may need replaced, come up with a plan for the long-term solution for the treatment plant as the city continues to grow or has additional treatment requirements.
Any questions on the contract?
Let me ask something. The one thing, from what I understood and, is that we need more manpower down there to get this back online, and that I see here it's one site visit per month, by Great West Engineering, and is that going to get us what we need to have people there and getting the work done?
The Great West is the coming on as a project manager, not the boots on the ground operators getting the work done. It's in more of a scheduling coordination capacity that we've just had a little bit of a gap in that in terms of our public works director and our contractors are focused on getting the work done. But there's been a bit of a gap in kind of a scheduled timeline around that, and then communications around status, and that's what I was kind of hearing from council and the public. That's been the missing piece. There is obviously work getting done. There are parts being ordered. There is a process being followed at this time. It's just been the project management level of it, as what I was hearing was the gap in the recommission project. So, Kristen, you speak to that?
To answer your question, I need 2 more people. I need 2 full-time staff members that know how to operate the plant. While Bryson and his contract team has done a great job keeping us this far, they're working full-time for Haley. Then they're coming down and work for us, and it's causing them problems. So we need 2 more people down there full-time.
But with that, Chris is doing a good job managing Bryson, but when I came on before Chris came on as Public Works, there's a lot of just needing more direction. And so there is between, Chris communicating with Andrew kind of running the entire overview preliminary schedule. Bryson and his team, they need directive, and Chris is filling in a operator capacity and utilizing staff that he has, but that also then takes away time from the project management side of it. And so I feel that asking Chris at this time to be on the ground, trying to get all that facility up and going, and then also kind of the oversight of the project management, it's too much, and I would like to bring in a project manager to handle the scheduling and activation side of it, while Chris and Bryson and the consult teams continue to do the actual repair work inside the facility. Suzanne?
I would like to add that I absolutely agree that we need to hire engineering support. I would argue that our most significant need is actually documenting the plan. So when you ask a question like, why do we, do we need more people? What do we need more people for? It's quite explicit when there's a response. I need 2 more people for this. So, so I 100% agree that, that we do need engineering oversight for that documentation to identify gaps in what's going on and to oversee the project. But in this case, there are some points that I would like to make in terms of the scope of the project, of the contract, and the lack of the excessive time of the contract, and the lack of specificity in terms of the deliverable. And I thought maybe we could go over a little bit more. This paper I handed out was an alternative proposal for fully documenting the existing wastewater facility repair plan that conceptually should be a 30-day contract, where this team is focused on working with Chris and Bryson to establish everything that's going on. So we have a full record, we know what they're planning to go with, and then we can, at the end of 30 days, begin to fill in the gaps and make additional preparations. The reason I think that's particularly relevant is we're also in the middle of budget, and there are significant expenses coming up, and I don't remember seeing any of them in the sewer, in terms of trying to deal with the stench and that type of thing. So I would like to see us take a little more specific path towards what this contract should be. I think it's too broad and it takes too long.
Can I ask how it's too broad when there's 4 deliverables in the?
But those aren't actually deliverables in terms of getting us a return on the planning. They're gonna report in to us and say every 2 weeks, this is what happens. And, Chris is kind of doing that, so we don't really need them to report in every 2 weeks. What we do need for them is to start our project management process. And what I had suggested was that this type of project should establish the baseline and implement the methodology for this project going forward. So that would be creating the project file and beginning to populate it. That it would, in creating that project documentation, we would more quickly identify the gaps. That it would allow us to more quickly corroborate the status of the project. Recognize where we're gonna miss timelines. It's very easy when you're running in 62 different directions to not recognize where things aren't gonna work. And
Okay, so how is a preliminary schedule and a list of outstanding repairs needed not falling into those categories?
Because they're broad, they don't include exactly what those schedules are supposed to. It's what's supposed to be in that schedule.
It's created, that's the scope of work that we're asking Great
Create
West
a
Engineering to do,
schedule.
is to create the schedule,
What schedule?
the repair schedule.
To repair, but that's just well, we
To
saw.
recommission the wastewater.
Right,
facility.
no, I understand what you're saying,
Okay.
but what does it look like? What components does it have? You saw a schedule, a 1-page document that could qualify as a schedule presented by Merrick over this entire huge water project, right? So some specificity in doing so, and you can take some of the photos out of here, but there needs to, when you're defining what you want your project management to be, you need some specificity, what you want that schedule to
Okay,
be.
so specifically, what would you like to see in your preliminary schedule?
So the plan should have all the work to date for the project, including associated costs, justifications, all documents available around
Okay, that's
that.
line item 3, project cost updates to city. That's in the deliverables.
Justifications and all documents around that.
Okay, so you'd like the wording, justifications and documentation.
The dates that the work was done and the testing and validation of the work or the absence of such were.
I'm gonna pause you right there.
Yeah, they're
And,
just
no, I'm just gonna pause you. Andrew, really quick, I have a question for you.
Yes.
When we're looking at project cost updates, kind of an understanding of repairs and our schedule, are you prepared or willing and able to add in timestamps or other information or justifications around why the work was completed or how it was completed, when it was completed? Would that be something that we will already be receiving kind of in your deliverables that are outlined in your agreement?
So the approach for this was from essentially where we are at today moving forward, not so much what costs have been acquired or spent, for the last year and a half. With that, yes, absolutely, we can go through that. We would very much need quite a bit of support from the city, primarily the clerk, to itemize the bills, the expenses, the vendors that those went through. So if you want that done, we can absolutely add that in. But we don't have access to that as far as Great West does. That's the city clerk access and the account. But we can add that in if that's what you guys want. Our approach to this is time and material. We can make it as robust and as detailed as you would like, or we can keep it as simple as you like. That really is the direction from the city, and we'll follow with that. But moving forward, that was the approach, is moving forward, what is it going to take and what expenses and needs are still out there so that we can complete the project as quickly as possible without incurring any unnecessary expenses.
Thank you for clarifying.
So oh, I'm sorry.
As treasurer, I will be able to track all the expenses. And report that.
Historical, so.
Okay, forget the historical, let's just move forward, okay, so all remaining pieces of work, including the justifications, materials, timeframes, blockers, costs, statuses, such as waiting for delivery and those things. All milestones and plans for go live, which is the transition from our existing system back, right, to the fully operational plant. What are the plans around this, right? Do they exist? How does it happen? What's taken? What are the timeframes, right? Are there any possible issues, blockers, or we just flip a switch, right? So some explanation and detail about that process. What happens to the lagoons after that? That was addressed, but again, in terms of a project plan, this habit that we have of just dropping pieces of words on tables and then having no way to go back and reference them and establish them and have accountability for them. What happens if we have to roll back after 1 week, after 4 weeks? These types of issues, and then understanding how that impacts the neighbors that are,
I hear everything you're saying, but everything you're saying is just more words than are what's on this paper. And so there's value, there's value in what you're saying, but I think it comes after allowing the very well-established professional engineers the opportunity to present. And if you have more questions or seek more from it, I think you're getting a little bit personally in the weeds of how much detail is in the agreement when there's a very clear scope. And the reason why there's a very clear scope is because I agree there's a history of not getting enough clarity on the scope of what an agreement is. And so that's why you have a very, what I think is a reasonable estimated budget of 15,000 time and materials to achieve this. The more we add, the more expensive things get. And so tightening up the scope with the end goal of getting the facility back online. What that looks like is very tight deliverables and a time frame. So I think it's meeting what your desires are, but with less words on a page for the agreement. And I think there is validity in what you're saying, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to go back to the engineer and ask him to spend more time when what he's delivered to us is going to achieve everything that you've called out in your comments.
Okay, so just to clarify, because my objective is to document the plan being implemented by Bellevue to rebuild the Bellevue wastewater facility plant to original design specs. And that's what this project is. And what project
management tool will we be using and able to engage with during this every 2 week thing? Like, what do we get at the end of this?
Okay, that's a great question. Andrew, in terms of our project status updates that we're receiving twice per month, what format can we expect to see that in? Is that can you just describe what that will look like?
So our approach was going to be just what I would call simple technical memo, basically a cover letter with photos, work completed. So when it was completed, what was done, and what the next steps are. So every 2 weeks, you'll have a report, whether it's 1 page or 10 pages. It just depends on what was completed, and it'll document the work that was done, when it was done, and what needs to be completed in the next 2 weeks in order to keep everything moving. So if there's a hiccup, that's the best way to look at it. If it said, hey, we were supposed to have Veolia on site to clean the membranes, but they were unable to be here on week 2. They're now going to be here on week 4. Okay, that changes the schedule. This is the work that has to be completed during weeks 3 and 4 now, while we wait for Veolia to be on site. So the idea is that we will be updating every 2 weeks of what got done, what still has to be done, if something slid or if something moved forward in the timeline, and then what the next steps are. And so it's the idea is it's a written document with photos, with a description. The reason, so I heard once a month coming on site. The cost to come on site is expensive. And so with the work that Chris and Bryson have been doing, they've been sending photos, they've been calling us, they've been keeping us up to date. So the cost, if you want us there more often, we can. But our approach was every 2 weeks, we give you a written update. Every month, we give you a more detailed one where we go on site and kind of walk the plant and see where everything's at. We're hoping that in a month we start doing some testing. Then we can be there and help with some of that testing and seeing where things are at and identifying anything else that's wrong. But the hardest part to this approach is until there's power and until the electrical's done, we don't know what other equipment's bad. So when we go to turn those switches on and start testing equipment, they could flip that switch on day 1 and nothing happens. And we won't know that until the electrical's in place. And that's one of the bigger struggles with this is when the electrical goes out, we don't know what other equipment's bad. We can assume, we can do some testing, but without the proper equipment running, we don't know all the damage that has happened. So we're trying to take it step by step, but keep everyone aware and up to date as frequently as possible. I know 2 weeks sounds like a long time, but in the construction world, 2 weeks is really, really short timelines for updates, especially where there's a lot of unknowns.
Can I ask a question?
Thank you, yes.
Is there a way in those memos to show progress, like a progress bar, so that we can see like, okay, this is electrical, these are outstanding parts, so more breaking it down? So, because I feel like in something as complicated as this, to keep track of like where we're at, like electrical's good, but now we're just waiting for these parts, or like, is that, or does that take a lot more time for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, once we do that initial and what I would call the initial 2 week checkup, right? That's going to tell us what is done and what is remaining. And then every 2 weeks, you're going to see more stuff get moved up into completed than what's left to be done. There now may be something added like, hey, we found this pump isn't working. We thought it was. We thought these aerators were working, but they were broken. So stuff may get added in that we didn't know about, but we will keep the work that is completed on there as kind of the history every checkup. So the work that's completed will grow as we go, and hopefully the work or what needs to be replaced as we go throughout this period, you'll start seeing that dwindle as we go. So we want to keep a running timeline every 2 weeks of, yep, this is done, this is done, this is done, this is still outstanding. And then we'll put like a critical path line item in there. Like these are the things that will stop the progress. For example, those membranes, they have to be cleaned and working before we can kick anything on. That's a critical path item. Now, We also have to have the aerators. We have to have a few other things, but there's a couple very key components that hinge on outside support. Like Veolia is, we have to work on their schedule. We can't say be here tomorrow. They're an outside, company. We are at their mercy. So there's some things that we need to plan for in advance to make sure that once Chris and his guys are able to get something running, we're not just waiting at that point. And so that's, like I said, yes, we will keep a running track. We won't just every 2 weeks, oh, here's a new report. We want to make sure you see the progress that's made. And I've been through that plant a number of times, and it is vastly improved from what it was a couple years ago. There's a lot of improvements. It's a lot cleaner. They've done a lot of work. And if anyone who knows, and I'm sure the people who've been in the area, it's not clean work. It's not enjoyable work. But they've done a lot.
And the goal here is, transparent communication around what is left to be done and, working with Great West to get this across the finish line in terms of getting
Then
the
if that's
facility
your
back online.
objective, then that is absolutely what you have contracted with, so. But I would just like to recommend that we reduce the scope of the contract to a 30-day contract that focuses on the explicit deliverable of documented existing plan currently being implemented, because we don't have any documentation about the plan.
Suzanne, is that what you have?
That is what a system, yes.
And I'm not a speed reader, so I'm not
No,
gonna be able
it's
to
just,
dive.
it's for the future, so we
I
can
know, I'm
evolve
just
into a.
Trying to finish my thought
Are
here.
there any other questions
No.
on the agreement at this time or any other?
The only other thing I guess I would add, to this language, so not only in the language of the contract, but the language in the header of the resolution would be, for a total amount not to exceed $15,000. If that is a desire of the council. Unless otherwise approved. Unless otherwise approved.
Unless otherwise approved, okay.
Yeah, but I do have a question. And if I may, as you point out, there are some like stop gaps. There are some things that say like the membranes have to be cleaned, right? They have to be operational, what have you, or usable to put in operation. Will you be providing like a backup plan? What if they're not? And are we gonna look at if some are usable, but some are not because they've dried out? What is, like, how can we ensure that when it's time to do those things, whether it's the blowers or the whatever piece of equipment, will there be a backup? Like some of the critical component pieces, like the membranes themselves.
Can I clarify what you mean by backup?
Well, not a backup, like instead of just saying, we didn't get those, they're not operational, so that's gonna hold up going online. So what's the next, what are some of our other options? If we can't reuse all of those membranes, do we have more membranes? Do we need to order more membranes? How long does it take to get membranes? How much do they cost? Would those be considered also in the insurance claim?
Let's not put it.
So I can actually answer that if you'd like, Mayor.
Yes, please.
When we worked with the insurance, a year and a half ago, a lot of the equipment in that plant was covered by the insurance. The membranes are specifically excluded in your insurance coverage. So if the membranes cannot be rehabilitated, which we have been in contact with Veolia, they feel like there's, in their opinion, from what they've seen from pictures and heard what happened, and followed kind of the process through this because they have been in contact with us multiple times, they believe that they can be rehabilitated and put back into service. They may not be at 100% capacity, but you can add a full nother train of membranes of the current design. Or when we worked with the insurance, they also provided a quote to go to a newer technology that would allow you to gain treatment capacity. But the cost of that was quite high, and with the insurance not willing to pay for any of it, the rehab is, you know, multiple factors cheaper. So to give you an idea, to replace the membranes with the newer technology would be just shy of $1 million. But to rehabilitate them, we're talking tens of thousands, you know, to have someone come out for a week, buy all the chemicals to do the cleaning and the training and teach the city how to do that maintenance as part of that. So the city would be assisting, so they know how to do that routine maintenance moving forward. So from a get the plant operational and city fund standpoint, you know, a year and a half ago, it was kind of planned. Let's go the route of using what we already have.
And that being
But if they,
said. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, but as far as if we go to turn something on and it doesn't work, with the blowers, with the membranes, those manufacturers, the representatives are based out of Salt Lake for both of those. So we've spoken with them multiple times. They said if something's not working, call us. We can be up there in a day or two to help troubleshoot it and see if it's just a simple repair or what that is. You know, that's not the same as Veolia coming up and doing a full service and cleaning the membranes. That's a different process. But if the blowers aren't working, they have repair guys in Salt Lake that can come up and look at them. So that would be the approach, is to try to power them up, see what they're doing, and then look at them if there's an issue rather than replace. Most blowers can be rebuilt, and so that's the idea. It's a motor.
Hey, Andrew, this is Rick Allington. When in the process are you going to find out whether our membranes are rehabilitatable?
So I just need to touch base with Bryson and Chris again. I know Bryson reached out to Veolia. I don't know if they set a schedule for them to come out, but they can truly come out at this point just about any time, because the electrical is getting close enough that we can start running water and sending pressure and chemicals through them. So we do need some of those pumps in place in order to do that. But likely within the next month, we should be able to get those membranes cleaned and going.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have no questions. Anybody else? I do appreciate hearing that Andrew has been on site before and he is aware of the history of the failure of this plant. And as I stated previously, I would be, I would like to have language of a not to exceed amount. An estimated total amount not to exceed $15,000 or as otherwise approved by the council. So if that's the case, I'm ready to make a motion to approve resolution number 25-17.
Second. Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Council President Shay,
Yes.
Member Reed,
No, because the contract is too broad and scope is for too long a time period and is not likely to deliver the right kind either.
Member Bergen,
Yes.
motion passes, thank you.
What about me? Oh.
Councilmember Mahoney,
Yes, please.
Councilmember Edna, yes.
In her defense, it's late.
We knew what she meant.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 7B. This is tied to our previous discussion. This is a consideration of a resolution number 25-16. a resolution by the city of Bellevue limiting the acceptance of new applications for sewer permits to those property owners holding a current building permit until wastewater collection and treatment shall have adequate and satisfactory capacity to receive, handle, treat, and dispose of the city's sewage. This is a resolution brought forth based on discussions with council, community members, and an intention not to continue to allow sewer permits that would add to the increase of the problem. The wastewater treatment facility was designed and constructed to utilize the MBR, the membrane plant prior to going to the lagoons. After the wastewater is treated within the MBR, the lagoons act as a buffer for doing either the rapid infiltration basins or being sent at the land application site. Those are both things that Chris alluded to in his, or mentioned in his presentation. The normal operation is to utilize the entire system. When we had our catastrophic failure, the MBR portion is what failed and went offline. And the city had to bypass the treatment process and go directly to the lagoons, which are not currently designed for the full treatment for the city. And the resolution before you would restrict approving any other sewer permits. It's excluding those that are already have current building permits. So current building permits that are in place, we would service those permits and those sewer connections, but any future building permits, we would not be accepting sewer permits to service those. There is a section in our code 8-2-6 B.4 that allows the city council to basically make this decision that would refuse to accept applications or issuance of any sewer permits, which is referenced in your resolution. And there, is concise language under now therefore be it resolved. Items 1, 2, and 3. 1, new applications for sewer permits will be limited to those only property owners who currently hold a valid building permit as of the date of this resolution. This resolution shall not affect property owners who are already connected to the city sewer system. And 3, the provisions of this resolution shall remain in effect until November 1, 2025, or until the repairs of the sewer system are completed, whichever comes first. The date of November 2025 is on the heels of communications from our Public Works Director and Andrew Kimmel from Great West Engineering with the intention of getting the plant back online by October 1st. But as we know, delays are inevitable. Thus, the date of November 1st, 2025 was decided for the resolution. I'd open it up for questions or discussion. And just to clarify, council, because of the attendance of people in the audience, I will be opening this up for public comment on the resolution. So, but council discussion first.
I would like to know the rationale between not establishing a moratorium, since the odor is the number one sign that we're over capacity, right? We're overloaded. Odor is the number one. No, it's not. I'm sorry, that's just from memory. It's typically, excuse me. Okay, odor, okay, according to multiple resources, but Tammy has disputed evidence, odor is very typically associated with overloaded facility. There could be other things certainly, but I think we all understand that the wastewater system is not designed to do what it's doing now necessarily. So it seems like our number one responsibility to, if we're truly trying to address the problem, is to not add to it, right? So what was your thinking in not stopping all additions to adding any material, but rather permitting some materials to continue to be added?
It's at this time I'd ask Brian Parker, Community Development Director, to give us a little bit of insight on current building permits, and that might help to focus that discussion.
All right, yes, thank you, Brian Parker, Community Development Director. So we currently have, I can't give you exact numbers because don't wanna get in the weeds, but, Doppel has switched their online already software, and there's some data loss, and it takes a little wrangling to get updated numbers from them, but, roughly, a dozen 2024 permits, and then 5 or 6 residential permits from this year, one commercial permit that I can think of off the top of my head that does not currently have a sewer connection. And then 3, 4 pending applications in the third process, of new permits.
What type of permits, I'm sorry?
New.
New building permits.
New building.
New building permits. And what is the total EUs for those doing it?
So the residential ones are all one per.
But you mentioned a couple, one or more commercial.
There's one commercial one. Chris, do you happen to know the EDU count on the Maverick?
I wanna say 2.5.
Okay.
On Maverick. Okay, so you're saying about 20 building permit EDUs, 20, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And. You know, we have made an obligation that we're gonna allow them to construct and build and operate on a timeline. Seems like something about time. Still what, but allowing this active from still connecting the sewer system.
So how many building permit, how many sewer hookups are we actually denying? Can you guesstimate that? Cause isn't this mostly, I mean, it's starting to sound like it's just for show, if we're not actually restricting any sewer permits.
I would classify it as pausing more than denying. It's still
Restricting,
right.
okay.
Like I said, we had 3 or 4 in conversation. I have no idea, you know, how many additional permits are gonna drop on my desk in the next couple of months. That it's up to private landowners to decide.
But I'm saying, we're allowing pretty much anything that we know of that could possibly come from building permits currently, right?
You know, the ones that actually have a yellow card in their hand.
That already have sewer hookup
That already have.
permits.
Building
Not
permit.
actually.
Building, I just said building permits, I thought, I'm sorry, my
Yeah,
bad.
building
So
permits
everyone-
from sewer.
Right, so everyone with a building permit is allowed to apply for a sewer permit. So at this point, we don't have any, well, based on that, there's no impact to Bellevue, this limit doesn't have any teeth, so
It
who
is.
are we actually expecting this may limit?
The people that want to build in the next couple. of months.
Future building
Yeah.
permit.
No,
So like,
they're not talking about building permits, they're talking about sewer permits.
Well, you have to
They're not.
you have to get a sewer permit.
Yes,
To
it's
build
ongoing in the
them, they'll be-
process.
you have to have the sewer permit.
Yeah, let me clarify though,
Okay,
we
so-
are restricting sewer permits, so in reality. Building permits could still come through if builders would like to submit permits and go through the permitting process.
Right.
We're just not guaranteeing the sewer permit during the duration of time while we are bringing the facility back
And I
online.
totally understand that, but
Okay.
apparently I'm not speaking clearly enough. So right now, we have 20 possible sewer hookups that are permitted based on our current building permits. That the building permit people could apply for a sewer permit. Now, a lot of those people, I don't know, the people behind me took like 18 months to build their thing, so I don't know how quickly. So what I guess I'm asking is, who is this envision, what hookups is this expecting to limit? Reasonably, not building permits, because you get a building permit in a month, and I doubt they're getting a sewer hookup in a month, so
So it
what
depends.
volume were we expecting to limit?
It's currently our policy is up to the contractor to determine when they want to connect into the water and sewer system before they get their certificate of occupancy. It could be before they start digging, it could be right before C of O. If they have a plan to get concrete washout and drywall water and all that sort of stuff on and off site safely and responsibly. So it really should not be affecting very many building permits, because they're just going to have to rearrange it.
I think that's kind of my point though,
Yeah.
right? We're not stopping probably much of anything that with the materials that we had during the course of the summer. And so to me, I mean, why bother?
To clarify, the resolution is feedback coming from council
No, I-
discussion, correct? So there was council discussion feeling that we needed to do something, we needed to halt sewer permits, we needed to put a hold on this. There was also concern around affordability around building and, you know, being conscious of permits that we have committed to service at this time. And so while the numbers, you know, may not be vast or able to be calculated right now, it is within our right to say, we're gonna put a pause on sewer permits, you know, until we feel the facility is back online. I hear what you're saying. You're feeling that in allowing sewer permits for the current building permits that are out there, this resolution is not restrictive enough.
Well, it doesn't, yes, I was looking for a moratorium. This and based on what this is and what will probably transpire over the course of the summer, the only people who would probably get a sewer hookup that would probably deliver materials into the sewer system are building permits that already exist. So it seems like an empty gesture. And so that's what so I'm a proponent of a moratorium. If this resolution is meant to take accountability for the mess that we have made over the many, many years. And we say, we're not gonna add to this problem right now. We're gonna let our guys jam and try and get this thing going. And we're gonna do it as fast as we can, so we can like maybe even move this date up or make it a shorter. I was a proponent of a 90-day moratorium. And to focus expressly on trying to ameliorate the odors while also supporting these guys and moving as fast as they can. So that's
Thank
what
you
I
for your
wanted to
feedback.
put forth.
Any other questions or feedback?
My feedback is that we issued building permits to those people that currently have a building permit in good faith, and in good faith guaranteed them that they were going to be able to hook into our utility system. I don't feel that it is appropriate at this time to pull back on those people that already are underway with the building permit. I don't feel good about doing that. What I do feel good about is reading through this resolution, understanding what section 826B4 of our city code states, which is our sewer ordinance. And it gives the city the ability to make the limitation that we're discussing right now.
I agree with you, Diane. I feel like since we have committed to those building permits, we are required to provide service to those permits that are already put in, but agree a pause until the sewer line. Respectfully.
I think using terms like required, when sometimes our water pressure disappears and these types of things, when we've failed to establish a standard like that across everything, is a little loose. I understand, and I also think that we have engaged for years now in harmful business practices to that impact the Bellevue Triangle. And that is also something.
We're new.
We are Bellevue, and we are trying, I mean, I would like to be respected, and I would like to be respected.
We're all
our neighbors.
I think this is a good time to open it up for public comment. We can definitely have a little more discussion, but I'd like to open up for public comment. Please limit your comment to 3 minutes. State your name and your address for the record.
Good evening, council. Ned Burns, 705 Elm Street. Been a long time since I've stuck around this long in the city council meeting. First of all, I would like to thank Tony Evans for his good reporting on this. Probably would have slipped right by me had I not seen the article online this morning. I believe this moratorium is bad for Bellevue. It basically ends the building season if the council passes it, and it projects a lack of confidence to the building community and to potential Bellevue residents. I truly appreciate that the city is trying to be good neighbors to our neighbors down in the triangle who live near and adjacent to the sewer plant. There are very likely, almost certainly, people in the real estate purchase pipeline who are under contract on lots in the city who could potentially lose their loans if lenders find out that there is a moratorium on the sewer process. We would lose them as Bellevue residents, and we could potentially lose their tax base if they choose to go elsewhere and build. When I was at that table right there, we signed a will serve agreement with Mr. Papley, and there could potentially be financial issues for the city if the council approves the moratorium that includes the Strayhorn subdivision. As I see Mr. Lasky and Mr. Papley here, I'd imagine they may speak to those issues as well. If the council does decide to enact a moratorium, which I strongly discourage you from doing, I would modify the November 1 date to either 30, 45, or potentially 60 days. I would exclude Strayhorn, and if an extension is deemed necessary, I would extend it by 30 days at a time to prevent any unnecessary delays in construction in Bellevue. There are obvious potential current fiscal year budgetary ramifications as well due to ceasing the issuance of building permits or sewer permits. This moratorium, while very well intentioned, won't make the lagoon stop smelling. The only thing that will make the lagoon stop smelling is getting the plant fully operational. It's incumbent on the city to throw their full force into getting that plant operational as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jim Lasky. I'm here on behalf of Strayhorn Partners, and I'll just reiterate everything the former mayor said. I think it's well stated and accurate. I also want to point out that if you look at the sewer connection statute or ordinance that you guys have, it says you have to make two findings in order to adopt this resolution. One finding is that the sewage treatment facilities have reached their capacity. The other finding is that a new hookup would result in overcapacity of the system. I don't think that's what we heard today. I think we heard there's odors. We heard the odors have been in large part ameliorated, but we haven't heard that the system is overcapacity. And we haven't heard that these extra 20 hookups are gonna make it more overcapacity, or else you would have to have a moratorium like Councilperson Reed says. So I think that maybe we're moving a little too fast here. As Mr. Burns said, Strayhorn does have will serve letters for all of the lots that are in phase 2. I mean, that was part of the approval of the PUD approval. Strayhorn also has lots in it with pending building permits that fall in the category that are different. They pay their fees for a building permit and they're under permit review right now. So that's somebody who's paid Bellevue a bunch of money, but doesn't have a building permit in hand quite yet. So what's gonna happen with those people? I think also largely the number of potential permits in Strayhorn over the summer is not gonna be huge. And if you're saying there's 20 right now and maybe there would be 10 more, I doubt it. And I think you're right, that those people probably wouldn't even hook up to sewer until later. They certainly wouldn't be adding to the sewer flow capacity before November. Then this whole moratorium is largely just something to appease people who are complaining about the smell. I think the city already has appeased people who have complained about the smell. I know people are complaining about the smell. People have called my office to talk to me about complaining about the smell. So I mean, I guess that's there, and it makes me feel a lot better that it seems to be being addressed with what we're doing right now. But I guess my key point is you need to make a finding that we're over capacity. And based on what we heard today about what was going on, there's not an overcapacity. It said, I wrote down that there's 2 to 3 more years of capacity in the lagoons. So we're not over capacity. So I think what we should do is do the best we can to address the smell, do the best we can to fix everything, and not go forward with the moratorium right now that isn't gonna do too much except for potentially cause harm to potential buyers or to a developer who has a development loan that all of a sudden could be in default because they can't get building permits, which the city basically said there was gonna be sewer service when they got the approval. PUD says it right in it. It's one of the findings.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Derek's gonna go real quick and then Jeff.
Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I don't need replacement, don't think we wanna get there.
Okay.
It's the guy.
Jeff, you can also make your comment from the seat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess in
State your name and address for the record,
Derek
please.
Ritter, 103 Glendale Road. I'm with Web Landscape at 162 Glendale Road, so both my business and my home is affected by this. That was one of the questions I had coming up is what is the capacity moving forward with the plant? Can anyone address that? What can Bellevue handle? And what can that current lagoon handle? Because, I mean, that's gonna be a big issue for you, cause it sounds like you're between a rock and a hard place. Right now with the demand for new development and for people that are down there that have got to deal with whatever comes downhill from that. So that'd be my question. Is there any answers for that? Is there any answers?
We'll let you make your public comment. I've made a note of your
Okay,
questions and we
okay,
can address
so
them.
that's basically my comment. I mean, I can understand how these guys feel. I would feel the same way if I was in their shoes. But we also have to live with the results of this, so.
Thank you, Derek. Jeff, go ahead.
Hi, here from my seat. Jeff Patley.
Address for the record.
409 Wall Street. Certainly appreciate the city, being a good neighbor. And certainly am ecstatic about the reports that Chris and your other consultants have talked about, with regards to the work on the sewage treatment plant. I think that is the responsibility, of the city, towards these people that are not in the city, but I also think as council people, we give responsibility to the people that are in your city. And so let's not talk about me, because I'm shocked that they actually talked about me, but let's talk about the little person that is gone and he has his lot, he wants to build. He's got a loan with the bank. And he can't get sewer permit. We can't build. So what happens? He can't pay the loan. So where does he look? Does he come to the city and say, hey, help me, give me a bridge loan or something? I think this is like, a mountain out of the molehill. I mean, truly, if you're talking about 20 hookups or 30 hookups, you're addressing the smell, it's not gonna make it worse. It's going to be, bad, it's not like terrace is a wonderful word. Moratorium is a horrible word for a city. It's terrible. It's bad for business, bad for development, bad for building. There's nothing good about it, and I think that this is a sort of a resolution that is just an unnecessary reach too far, whether it's well intended or not. And the risk reward to the city is actually horrible. Because if somebody actually did come back and say, hey, my loan's been cool, or whatever. They're probably gonna come back with such an last week or something. It's not gonna be me, but you gotta think of the little person here. And you gotta think about the great progress you're making. You gotta think about, I know that my first phase afforded a tremendous amount of revenue to the city. You put a moratorium like this on, you basically cut off your monies for beyond a year, and you need money. So, I just think that this is a resolution that I think that sewer is working, the sewer facility is working itself out. I think it's an unnecessary resolution. I don't think there was enough discussion about what the unintended consequences could be to the city, which are, potentially enormous. And I would just, I would either table it, have more discussions and understand the liabilities potentially, or just, go without it. Now, I read it, I was a little confused. For instance, I have an application that I paid for a building permit. It's in the process. Based on what I read, I can't get a sewer permit. But I've already paid and I'm in the process. So at the very least, you should maybe consider setting a date and you say, after such and such a date, these people. So there's some notice to actually this coming. It's a good thing that I read the Mountain Express, because this was a shock. That this, It wasn't a shock that he made the report. This is sort of a shock.
Thank you, Jeff.
That this would be, in the works. So, I don't think that this, I think the upside in what you're trying to accomplish here is not in the best interest of the people that you represent in town and a little personally.
Thank you for your comment.
You're welcome.
Are there any hands on Zoom for public comment? I will go ahead and, oh, Tony, sorry.
Pfizer.
We haven't, I haven't expressed. I'm quite sure that I reported on the sewer capacity with the plant prior to the March 2023 breakdown. And I don't know that the city is still working with, was it Keller at that time? But I think
We
we
were,
got the estimates from them, and I don't know that the city is still working. But it's in an archive story, and I think it's something like 250 EDUs that the city was still capable of fulfilling. I'd have to double check that. I'm just throwing that out to let you know that I did get to the bottom of that at some point.
Thank you, Tony. Okay. Go ahead and close public comment. Do you want to discuss or gonna bring Andrew to the conversation?
What would you like me to address?
I was just gonna bring Andrew, if you're available, to be brought into the conversation, in regards to our, this resolution in regards to nearing or at capacity, which is one of our line items we outlined in the resolution on one of our whereas, and kind of speak to where we're at in terms of capacity with the use of the lagoons, and bypassing the MBR. And then to clarify, Derek, is your question around if we are nearing or at capacity, or is it around how much capacity we have left in our facility?
Exactly how much capacity you have left.
Okay.
Even if you make the conversion, how much capacity you have left.
Okay.
And I think that's also a finding that we have to make in order to.
So I think we're talking about two different things. The finding we would have to make is around nearing or at capacity. And then the discussion about capacity has to do with when the facility is back online and operational. Pause. What's,
You should look at your statute, because that's not the finding you have to make. You have to say that it's over capacity.
And
Okay.
capacity can be defined as overload.
So what,
Okay.
what capacity can the
so, but thank you. We're talking about a lagoon system that wasn't designed to handle the waste that we're at. And when you were referring to what Chris was talking about of the 2 to 3 years, he was talking about the cleaning of the sludge out of the lagoon system, not, and correct me if I'm not, the capacity of the lagoon system. So I'd like to bring Chris and Andrew into the conversation. Andrew, I'd start with you. Thank you. I'll get rid of the word nearing capacity. But in the ordinance, the discussion of capacity. Andrew, if you addressing that about our current operation of the lagoons and our capacity issue.
So as far as capacity is concerned, the treatment system as a whole is how you look at capacity. So that includes the mechanical plant as well as the lagoons. When the mechanical plant is online, you have available capacity to meet all of your current needs as well as your, additional future permits. The plant was also designed originally to have a third train of MBRs or membranes installed, which have not been installed. So you could, with the current design of the mechanical side of the plant, you could add another 30% capacity. Now, that has nothing to do with lift stations, collection system, etc. That's just the mechanical side itself. Where the treatment plant is operating today, and when I say treatment plant, that is the lagoons without the mechanical side of it, then no, you do not have additional capacity because the lagoons were never designed or intended to treat to your permit on their own. Now, we've been working with Chris and your operators to be adding, and I don't want to say chemicals, but adding different constituents to the lagoons to help with odor, to help to settle out solids, to do what we can to make those lagoons function as efficiently as possible to meet your current demands today. So those are the questions that have been asked are two different questions, but neither of them address the exact situation. Capacity today and capacity when it's back up and operational. In DEQ's eyes, you have capacity if you're operating your plant as designed. You're not operating as designed, so you don't have capacity. That's how the DEQ permits are written. And so in working with DEQ, as the city's been doing, they are allowing you to move forward as the city would normally, as long as you feel comfortable with that situation. They're not stepping in and saying a moratorium or stop all building or anything like that, because you have been working with them all along to keep the system operational. You're still land applying, you're still using the RA basins, you're still doing the testing, you're meeting those requirements. So in DEQ's eyes, you are doing what you can to get back into full operation. Does that help clarify or is it just muddying it even more?
Great, thank you.
Can I ask for specifics of what the lagoons are supposed to be operating at and what is coming in right now? For capacity?
There's quote, no design for the lagoons to take straight waste, if that makes sense. Those lagoons were not designed to be the standalone treatment train for the city. The original design of that system is to go through the mechanical side, the MBR first. So to say, what is the design capacity of those lagoons? They weren't designed to do what they're doing today. That wasn't their intention.
Thank you.
Is it because they changed? Like how did it change? Like the lagoons are still the lagoons that were in place before the membrane reactor plant got installed. And so they were our primary source of treatment. That's how we treated wastewater was the lagoons and rapid infiltration basins and then land application. And we did that for a long time. And then we upgraded. So is that not, I mean, does that make that system different? And how is that making that system different?
Your upgrade was based on permit requirements. So prior to, I want to say what the plant was put in 2007-ish, if I remember right, somewhere in there. Prior to that, you had a different permit with different requirements that your lagoons could handle. But your new and current permit, or multiple permits that you've had since that iteration, the lagoons are not designed to treat to that level of treatment, not long term. That what we've been doing with the city, with Bryson and Chris, to meet those treatment requirements, it's not sustainable. You can't do that process forever. Which is why Chris mentioned you're going to have to do sludge removal, because we're settling out those solids. Sludge removal in a lagoon is anticipated every 10 to 20 years. You're going to hit that in 5. Because of what we're trying to do to pull out the solids, to reduce odors, to make those lagoons treat to the level that they need so you can meet your permit. So that's not a sustainable practice. So yes, you had lagoons before, but your lagoons today cannot meet today's permits. Long term.
Can a permit be adjusted since we're using the same application process?
No, it's called anti-degradation. And so your permit that you had in 2007 or prior, with whatever testing that was done to groundwater or soils or others, DEQ, and at that time EPA, came back and said, here's your new permit, you have to treat to a higher quality. And so in doing so, that puts you in a higher classification. You can't slide backwards in a permit. So whatever your requirement was, you can't become less strict as time goes on. So even though you used to have a lagoon, if you could have stayed lagoon and meet the new permit, that was fine. But at the time, the engineer that designed it or who the city worked with said you had to change your process. You could still change your process to a completely different system. You could still go to lagoons if they could meet the current permit. However, your current lagoons as designed today cannot do that.
Thank you. Tom?
Maybe a little bit to just kind of respond to the comments that Jim Lasky made. Maybe this is a quibble a little bit with comment, but as I read this section, 8264 for B4, talks about, yeah, you do need to make a finding if in the judgment and discretion of the council, sewage treatment facilities and or collection lines have reached capacity, as Jim mentioned, or the granting of permits for further and additional sewage connections or hookups to the wastewater treatment system. It's a little bit of a paraphrase, results in an overcapacity of the system, as Jim mentioned. That I think those were the two, but there is an or in there also that says or any significant portion thereof. So you might not have reached overcapacity, but in the judgment of council, you've reached a significant portion of that capacity, then I think that's an appropriate consideration.
And yet we are over capacity, right?
According to the permit.
According to the permit, we are.
Yes. So, and that was the justification for the resolution. I think it is, different than a moratorium in the way that it's an enactment of the section of ordinance that was just referenced. And it is at the judgment and discretion of the common council. Different stipulations than a moratorium, and so that's how this resolution came to be that's on your desk.
I move to adopt resolution number 25-16.
Second.
Councilmember Davis,
No.
Council President Shay,
No.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Councilmember Ovenoff,
So for a resolution, right? Yeah. Yes.
Councilmember Mahoney,
No.
Emphatically.
Councilmember Bergen,
No.
motion fails. Thank you.
It was exciting while it lasted.
Thank you all for coming in and making your statements. Thank you for the discussion. We will move on. Thank you. Item 7C, a resolution, resolution number 2518, adding members to the Bellevue Events Committee. Bringing this up. Bringing this before you, this is adding members to the committee that was previously established. John. Sorry, I'm just trying to. Members may be added to the committee by resolution and may serve for a term of 2 years. I am recommending the following members to the committee. Stephanie Mahoney, who has been a wonderful service to us historically in the Labor Day event, and has great enthusiasm around events in Bellevue. Jessica Ovenoff, who has been a wonderful representative from the council, and was the reason to be honest, I'm even bringing the event, I even brought the events committee to be established within the city. She started an ad hoc events committee that was very effective. Jen Kepler, who is a world of energy and knowledge and drive and ability to bring people together in a very, what I see potentially being a great organized fashion. And then John Ferrero, who is a previous council member, sits on the board of borough and had, in my time serving on council, was one of the sometimes only council members who showed up in representation of the city at our city events. So a large enthusiast for Bellevue and for city events. So those are my recommendations. We have one more seat open, so if there is any interest of any other community members on being on the events committee, we would welcome your interest and reaching out to us. I stand for any questions about this, or if there are none.
I move to adopt resolution number 25-18.
Did you second? It's missing John's name.
Oh,
wow,
the
that's
new one, yeah.
And I don't, okay, sorry.
Huh?
I don't vote on.
No, you recuse yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion on the table.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did second, sorry, I apologize, didn't hear.
no, wait, Council President Shay,
Yes.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Councilmember Mahoney,
Yes.
Councilmember Bergen.
I'll abstain.
Okay. The motion passes.
I will swiftly move on to item 7D, consideration of resolution number 25-19, establishing a transportation advisory committee. Brian Parker, Community Development Director, take it away.
All right, yes, thank you, Brian Parker, Community Development Director. So we have been working with the consultants at Porter and Associates for several months now, mostly behind the scenes in data collection and hiring for workings on developing a transportation master plan. It is time to start doing some public outreach and getting the community involved in the city more generally involved. And so we're looking for a advisory committee. Suggested committee members are in your updated one that I printed out, put on the table, that didn't make it in the packet, but finalized it today. The individuals are Tom Rubenstein, who's on Shop Valley Pizza, as well as business owner, Jolene Family, is an active engaged member of the community, local architect, and also business owner. Tom Blanchard, serves on Mountain Ridge Board of Directors, local government experience, really. And then myself, Chris, and Casey, as staff members over here. With that, I'll say a great question.
What exactly will the output be? I mean, we got a lot on our plate. We have this kind of insanity with our planning submissions, and now we got another committee to do. I just gotta wonder if we need to keep making committees, and if maybe we shouldn't be looking at code enforcement and making our code enforcement systems work and improving our building permit process and all of that. So I'd love to know expressly what the residents are gonna get out of this.
They're going to get a plan on improving our transportation. Right. I know that I'm not as specific as you wanted to be.
You know, I think it's reasonable, and can we prioritize that above all the other things that maybe we could ask?
And the reason that this is getting some priority attention is that we have grant funding that we have allocated for this, so that if we do not develop a plan out of that, we are wasting free money.
So what is the focus of the plan? Are there criteria for making it actionable? So we get the plan and then we can
Yes, there'll
actually
be
do something.
implementation steps out.
And so even the idea of the plan will be something that has maybe a set price tag that we could accomplish in the next year, or?
Yeah, I
are we
think
gonna
that's
try
something
and
that we
make
could look into.
I don't know if
you
you agrees with me about
It needs to
plans,
be a fiscally constrained. The data and goals and objectives will be incorporated in broader comprehensive plan.
So I add to that too, with the plan, we can go get financing to do work on our streets. We can go get grants, without a plan, you're not ready to get grants. They won't give you grants if you don't have a plan. So this is the first step in getting those grants so that we can get street improvements.
Can I ask, so the general sense of the community, the committee, you will make the plan, present to council quarterly on updates on what you're thinking? Are we involved, or you just come to us and saying, this is what?
I don't recall what exactly the scope of work had for council check-in, but there's at least one or two.
Cool.
They're aiming to have it adopted. November, so it's.
Was just curious. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Tammy, do you have any desire to serve on the committee?
You want one more thing?
I know.
I'm just thinking because it's in your category, but that's all.
Sewer's more in my name, right? But, yeah, I don't know that I could commit to serving on that, thank you.
Can we just follow up a little bit so what exactly are the directives of this? Where do those come from? Saying, is this a plan for the entire city or is it all about riding bikes up and down?
So let's back it up. We have a transportation study happening.
Right, I know that.
Okay, so this is the output of information from the transportation study that is going to an advisory committee with the result being a transportation plan, which will then be presented to us.
Okay, but that's an awful lot of information I would expect not to have perhaps a way to focus it in a particular area and come up with an actionable plan. You could take all that data and develop a multi-million-dollar plan that does nothing for us, right? That's not actionable. Or if there was some way we established transportation needs that we thought were immediate, that we focused the committee to say, hey, we'd really like to address these needs. We believe we could get this much money. Could you take the information from this data and evaluate it and put it together into a plan that was actionable? Just guess what I'm trying
Is
to.
that something?
So
that
a
would
question for
resolve-
Ryan, when do we feel that there would be a target completion date for the plan?
Like I said, November-ish was
Okay.
what our scope of work.
So
is.
if we had updates in your staff report, that could be something we could react and respond to give a little council direction. That would end up back with committee.
I can also ask Mariah. Do a check-in with you guys.
Yes, Mariah. Okay.
Of course.
Of Forsgren. So what I'm hearing is, just wanting the output of the plan not to be some large multi-million-dollar non-tangible implementation. And so how could council have a little bit of, oversight and or feedback in that to make sure that what we're receiving is something good for our community that we actually
Yeah,
achieve?
provide some guidelines
Yeah.
saying, you know what, we've always wanted pink roads. Can you figure it out?
So I think, the takeaway could be council or, updates within your, department head report and Mariah from Frostgren, giving some kind of presentation to council.
I mean, it seems kind of like maybe now's the time to appoint a committee. That seems like it's sort of the appropriate time in the process. Maybe some refinement does seem like it is something we would want to monitor and that at the end of the day was something that might be valuable to us as opposed to, I kind of think back to, we probably should take that picture off the wall, honestly, but when Keller made the proposal, for millions of dollars of improvements and like everyone kind of goes, yeah, this is just unrealistic. It isn't gonna happen. And so I don't know how much Keller charged the city to generate that, but that was unfortunate, I guess. And we maybe don't want to see the same outcome here and that can occur. Not by stopping the citizen advisory committee from starting their work, but just by monitoring as suggested. So I think that's a good idea.
Forsgren does these a lot for small towns, small cities, so they.
So does Keller.
And for the sake of time, I would take a motion on this. I think we've heard feedback, and we have given direction to staff.
So I would move, resolution of the city of Bellevue establishing a transportation plan advisory committee, designating roles and establishing effective and termination dates, which is resolution number 25-19.
Councilmember
Second.
Davis,
Yes.
Council President Shay,
Yes.
Councilmember Reed,
No.
Councilmember Ovina. Yes. Councilmember Mahoney,
Yes.
Councilmember Bergen.
Yes.
Motion passes, thank you.
Last item is item E, consideration of resolution 25-20, authorizing the mayor to execute the renewal of a contract for services with Mountain Rides Transportation Authority for public transit system services. Shelley, you brought this item. Is there anything you'd like to add or speak to?
Well, I can just briefly, I've been really busy with budget, so I did not read the contract totally. But it is an annual contract that Mountain Rides brings to all of the cities, and I believe Tom can address if anyone has any questions about the services that we receive for the money that this contract, that we pay for this contract.
Did you want to answer a specific question?
I do. I was reading over the contract and I didn't see, I see this service hours, but I didn't see anything in specific in our contract that states that bus service runs to Bellevue till 2 AM within here, so I don't know what our contract covers, cause on this back, I have exhibit A and it says Mountain Rides preliminary service plan, but there's like a blue valley, red, bronze, silver, gold, so I don't know who we are.
We are the valley.
Okay,
And it is the most important route that, we service. It has the largest ridership, is largely overcrowded during the hours. You know, I don't know what more response you want with that.
So what's the plan moving forward if it's overcrowded and if people can't get on the bus?
Well, that depends on busing. If we recognize it as a hourly thing that we can depend upon, we'll bring another bus in. So if we see, particularly, we run into problems with school kids getting out, as an example, for instance. And so you go up to Albertsons at 3:30, 4 in the afternoon, and you'll find 35 kids there waiting, and they're trying to get onto a bus that is also bringing commuters back down. It's largely full. And in this case, because it was a school-related issue, we worked out a relationship with the school so that they would not release the kids. At that point, they would overload our bus. But if we see this coming on a regular space, we will try and put a second bus into that rotation. Long-term plans would be to increase our total activity from a half hour, you know, during rush hour period to a 15-minute bus service. So instead of every half hour between 7 and I think it's 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then in the evening between 4:45 and about 6:30, we're running every half hour. And if those demands continue to increase, we would hope to increase our ridership to about 15-minute interval rather than 30. That, of course, all comes back down to the Joint Powers partners, who Bellevue is a 1% contributor. I mean, the amount that we contribute, you know, I think Ketchum is doing something like 700,000. You know, we're really, we don't have much leverage. But in the meantime, we have the opportunity down here to get a lot more ridership. And I think that's some of the things we'd like to work on, to increase the ridership coming out of Bellevue, among other things. But, you know, as service demand grows, we hope to be able to meet that service demand with additional schedules.
And Tom, has there been a discussion at all, like with direct bus lines going from Ketchum direct to Haley, or Ketchum to Haley and then Ketchum to Bellevue, to make transportation more efficient and quicker?
We do look at that if we can, and actually, if you ride the Valley Bus during the, well, actually from Albertsons up to, we have a stop at East Oregon, stop at the hospital. But beyond that, it's direct service right into Ketchum. So we're close to that. But we're not getting enough ridership right now out of Bellevue to justify, you know, starting a bus as an express here right now. If we start increasing that, that is one of the things that we would like to do. But right now, the demand in Bellevue isn't as large. Haley is one that's really producing the demand to fill that bus up. And I don't understand that, because we have a huge work community here that I think should be using the bus.
Right, well, if you're in a car right now, it takes an hour and 15 minutes to get to Ketchum from Bellevue, so you add it to the bus, and that's a 2-hour, if you want people to use the bus. That's why I was thinking, like, how, you know, an express lane, you know, commute hours, have the right lane be for buses.
Well, I think we agree with you.
That's how you.
On the other hand, I drove up there the other day and it took me an hour and a half. Well, it took me a half hour to go from the bridge to the first stop in the Ketchum area, just because of that construction. That is a zoo right now.
And you said I think we met before and you're talking about for a new bus, it's like $1 million for a new bus, right?
You know, we are converting to all electric. And we anticipate that we'll be picking up a couple more electric buses on a grant system next year. We'll order them next year. It takes about 1.5 years to build these things and get them on the road. But at that point, we should be able to deliver full electric service on all of our main bus lines. We still have to have diesel in reserve. Because if electricity goes down in our community for a day, we can't recharge the buses. You know, so recharging is an issue, so we need diesel backup, that kind of thing. So we'll always have a diesel component, but we expect to be fully electric on all of our primary routes. It'll be 27 hours.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
So just to clarify, this is for the next fiscal year.
Yeah.
So
For the bound.
Is this what we budgeted last year, or is this, was it already in our budget?
It
for
was
this year?
12,000 last year, I believe.
We're at 14 this year.
Yeah, and then it's not in the resolution either, it doesn't show the amount in the resolution. Unless there's another new one.
Is this one about 20?
Yeah.
So are you suggesting another whereas statement that says we've,
If we were going to approve it, I thought that it would be important to have the.
Good catch. Thank you,
In the
Tim.
resolution.
another whereas?
Uh-huh.
Or even adding to that last whereas, you know.
Yeah. Or regardless, whatever you wanna call
Okay.
Sounds like you got it.
Well, I was by the barn the other night. And and I haven't been back to double check this, and this isn't really related to the resolution, but it's something that probably was related to the building permit. The lights on the south side of that were shockingly bright and unshielded. And I don't know that they comply with any building or county or city lighting ordinance. Now, we can talk about that, we can talk about that
It's
later.
being
It's not
addressed.
related, but.
It's being addressed and Brian can speak to it.
Yes, that is a known issue. The architect who is working with the contractor to get cheese shrouds installed and is pushing that forward and is investigating whether those can just be turned off at night until that happens.
I'm scrolling down.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I would take a motion at this time.
And so I would move to approve resolution number 2520, a resolution of the city of Bellevue authorizing the mayor to execute the renewal of a contract to services with Mountain Rise Transportation Authority for public transit services.
Second.
Don't you have to amend it to your?
Yeah, as amended by Councilwoman Davis. Indicating the specific amount of the.
And for the
I
Valley.
think Sean seconded.
So we got a second from Sean.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Council President Shay,
Yes.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Councilmember Ovina,
Yes.
Councilmember Mahoney,
Yes.
Councilmember Bergen,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, before everyone freaks out, I'd like to try this and see.
Really quick, I just have to, it's
Oh.
on the agenda. Is there anyone who'd like to make a public comment at this time?
What
Anything.
what was the end of new business
Oh,
that I was gonna say?
Okay,
you had,
I'm
ready to go.
I'm ready for a motion for,
I
Adjournment.
wanted to move to amend the agenda to add an action item that empowers the city of Bellevue to submit a letter to our Idaho senators and local representatives that expresses our concerns about the
I'm gonna cut
proposed
you off.
sale of.
That's not the correct point. The amendment of the agenda has to happen at the beginning of the meeting.
It doesn't say that in the Idaho open meeting laws. I'm okay with, I mean, this is something I want us to be able to do, but can. It says that, it did not make that stipulation in the ordinance or whatever that law.
Is this
open
something
meeting.
that's sensitive, time sensitive?
Well, I think it is, so let me just, you can decide. I mean, I'm okay with decide, but it's about us getting a letter in that basically expresses that affirms, that offers Bellevue and whatever we can do. About the public land sales provisions to express our support. To say, on behalf of Bellevue residents, the city of Bellevue adds our voice in opposition to the public land sales provisions included in the current reconciliation package.
Okay,
As you fight to preserve our public lands, the residents of Bellevue stand ready to assist in all ways possible and hope you will call on a small community
Where's
in
the-
whatever way.
who created the document? Where's
I
the-
did, I was just a letter that
Okay.
we could submit that I wanted us to consider. Thought
Um,
it was time sensitive because.
I kind of wonder if it's something we could add for tomorrow, but if you'd like
Oh,
to
yeah,
pass it
we
out,
can-
let's
yeah,
review it
that'd be
since we're
okay,
gathering
that's
tomorrow.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
okay, so you're saying it has to be done when?
At the beginning of the agenda is when you amend the agenda.
We're.
I can't tell you at this very moment.
So you'll tell me later.
At the beginning.
I promise I will.
Okay, I take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Thank you. And you second.
Bye, Sean.
Bye.
Did I get a second on adjournment?
Yeah, we already.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Sorry, there's too many.